I got loyalty, got royalty inside my DNA. I got love, peace, got war and peace inside my DNA. I got power, and pain and joy inside my DNA.
Hello and welcome back to my channel, Fanfic Fantasy. Today, we're kicking off the third part of our series, What If Tanjiro Met Deku? The author of this story is rosetintedtears from fanfiction.net.now. Let's dive into the fanfic. It's sooner than Tanjiro expects when he comes across another student. He'd sat by the kitchen for a while after Bakugo had left, studying the rooms around him and replaying his interaction with Izuku's friend. It makes him smile, the realization that it doesn't matter how far into the future he is, people will always be people. Bakugo may be able to shoot literal explosions from his hands, but he's no different than Inosuke. Tanjiro does, however, refuse to imagine what would happen if the two met. Arson, at least, and he'd probably have to keep Inosuke from chopping the kid's head off without thinking or on purpose. Anyway, Tanjiro is trying to decide how to best deal with the hunger beginning to gnaw in his stomach since Izuku is still out when the former Misar, now known as Uraraka, flies into the kitchen. As in actually flies, her feet most definitely are not touching the floor as she pushes off the wall with one hand. She lets out a squeak that's just as surprised as Tanjiro feels when she catches sight of him and crashes to the floor. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Tanjiro cries as he jumps from his chair to rush over. "I didn't mean to startle you. Are you okay?" Uraraka groans from her spot on the floor, blinking one eye open at him to stare at him. "Did I hit my head or are you talking weird again?" Tanjiro smiles nervously, offering her hand up. Her unexpectedly strong grip takes Tanjiro off guard for a moment as she gets to her feet. "No, it's not you, though I hope you didn't actually hit your head." Uraraka waves a hand dismissively. "Nah, I wasn't up that high anyway. Leg day was yesterday and I was feeling lazy," she sighs dramatically, before seemingly remembering Tanjiro. "Oh, hey, it's you, right? I can tell by the accent." "Tanjiro," he confirms, relieved that she hadn't freaked out. "And you're Uraraka, right?" "That's me." Uraraka grins widely, and Tanjiro feels a bit blinded. She smiles like Nezuko used to, he thinks with a pang. "Nice to formally meet you. Sorry about the craziness of last time. We're just used to villains trying to get the drop on us." Tanjiro nods, though he can't help but wonder how many times they would have had to go through that to have that immediate reaction of suspicion. "Oh, it's fine. I get it, trust me." Uraraka shuffles off to the same big rectangular box that Bakugo had gone to, almost shoving her entire face in before sighing again. "You didn't happen to see an angry blonde guy this morning, did you?" Yeah, he went for a run," Tanjiro answers, wandering over to one of the floor-to-ceiling windows and looking out. He can see other buildings in the distance, one particularly big and shiny looking, but there's trees dotting the landscape, too. "Damn," Uraraka swears, pulling out a gray box that reveals to be holding eggs when she flips it open. "I hoped he'd make breakfast. You'd never think it, but Bakugo is the best cook." "Oh, well, I'll just make some eggs and rice. You want some?" "Yes, please," Tanjiro says. He glances back at the kitchen. He has not one clue what half the stuff in there does, but he feels he should offer anyway. "Is there anything I can help with?" "I'm all right, thanks though." Uraraka smiles lopsidedly at him. "You're kind of a guest here anyway. I'm happy to blow you away with my mediocre egg skills." Tanjiro laughs, moving to lean against one of the counters. Uraraka is putting a pan over a cage-looking thing, then twists a knob until fire spurts over the disc beneath it. Tanjiro opens his mouth to ask her about it, fascinated, but feels Izuku beginning to wake up on the other side of their bond. He figures out what happened in a few seconds flat, which proves that they'd truly gotten used to this kind of thing. "Yeah," Tanjiro confirms the switch to Izuku, trying not to laugh as he watches Uraraka dance around the pan that's now spitting oil. "Good morning, though." Izuku grumbles out something that even Tanjiro can't understand, and this time he really does laugh a bit. No matter how many times it happens, it's still hilarious to him just how much Izuku is not a morning person. Tanjiro doesn't have to drag either of his teammates out of bed, but he does recall having to do it once or twice with his siblings. It takes him a second to realize what he'd just likened Izuku to, but he finds that he's not surprised by the idea. The word brother fits around his relationship with Izuku like it was made to be there, and it makes something warm glow in Tanjiro's chest. Izuku isn't listening, still half asleep and taking in Tanjiro's world, but that's okay. Izuku could arrive at his own conclusions in his own time. And even if what he finds isn't exactly brother, then that's okay, too. More of Izuku's classmates begin to fill the room in chattering duos or trios, some going to the couches immediately to flop or talk. A handful of them join Tanjiro and Uraraka in the kitchen, some that Tanjiro has seen before. He recognizes the blue-haired guy and the green girl from Izuku's photo and the tail guy from their last encounter, as well as spotting Kiri something talking with another boy with hair yellow enough to rival Zenitsu's. He doesn't see either Shinsu or Todoroki, though. Tanjiro tries not to waste time on introductions, offering a hand to the blue-haired guy with a smile. It seemingly takes a second for him to register what Tanjiro had said before taking his hand firmly and giving a jerky shake. He introduces himself as Ida in a stiff tone, and the girl just says, "Call me Tsu," in a croaky voice. Tail guy is a bit more amiable, smiling back and saying his name is Ojiru before apologizing for last time's shenanigans. "Really, don't worry about it," Tanjiro tells him. "We were all a little freaked out, including me and Izuku." Speaking of which, Uraraka pipes up, suddenly shoving a plate of food into Tanjiro's hand. He blinks at it in surprise before remembering his manners and thanking her. "He's, like, in your body now, right? Can we go find him?" "Oh, right. They didn't know about the whole space-time thing." "Unfortunately, no," Tanjiro says apologetically. "I actually live in the Taisho period, so he's hundreds of years away, I'm afraid." "Wow," Ojiru whistles after a second. "This must be quite the change for you, then, huh?" Tsu jumps in, her finger pressed to her chin. "It's definitely a bit confusing," Tanjiro grins a little. "Especially because I grew up in the mountains, so I'm unaccustomed to the technology in my century." "Oh, wait," Uraraka gasps, spatula floating for a split second before she grabs onto it again. "Wait, that's before quirks, isn't it?" "Correct," Ida says as Tanjiro nods. "The Taisho period is in the pre-quirk era, along with the majority of the 21st century." Tanjiro moves back to one of the seats at the counter so he can eat, Uraraka sending a pair of chopsticks his way via air transport. It's pretty cool to watch how her touch can make things float, and then send them back to the earth again. She'd be a formidable slayer with that power granted, all of them would. Tanjiro's sure that Shinobu would absolutely love Uraraka. She excuses herself when a little jingle begins playing quietly, fishing a small pink square from her pocket that seems to be the source of the noise, saying it was her mom. Tanjiro isn't really sure what to make of that. Was she calling the square her mom? But it slips away as the door slams. He startles a bit at the noise before he sees Bakugo, face set in his usual glower. A few of the students call out to him, including Kiri something and a girl that has pink skin. Bakugo, however, marches right past them to slam his water bottle on the counter by Tanjiro. "All right, bastard," Bakugo says, crossing his arms over his chest. Even without his usual nose, Tanjiro catches a strangely sweet scent from the boy. "I want to see what you got. Let's go." Tanjiro blinks, looking helplessly at Ida and Ojiru. Tsu had wandered off to talk to another student. "You want to fight me?" "No shit, Sherlock," Bakugo scoffs, the phrase thankfully made familiar by Izuku. "We're all stuck at this damn school and you're already a hero, so get off your ass and show me what you're made of." There's a moment of silence as Tanjiro wrestles with how bad of an idea that is. It could be fun, he supposes, but he doesn't think his breathing styles would protect him if Bakugo decided to blow him up. He doesn't even have his sword, and that doesn't seem like a great replacement for a quirk. And the only reason his nose being dulled wouldn't put him at a disadvantage is because he doesn't need the opening thread. He's not going to kill the kid, for Kami's sake, but it definitely leaves a little more uncoordinated than usual. "I mean," Izuku says, tilting his head, "you kinda do have a quirk, at least right now." "I've got no clue how it works, though," Tanjiro sighs, "and I don't want to go breaking my limbs, especially since I'd be using your body to do it." Izuku shrugs, too dismissive for Tanjiro's taste. "You can experiment a little if you want. I don't mind. My body's starting to adapt to it a bit more. But you can also just let it come to you. I have no doubt you can beat or at least put up a fair fight against Bakugo. He telegraphs a good amount, always starts with a right hook, and his explosions can't get too big without him stockpiling sweat, which he can't do without his gear. Have Yaoyorozu make you a practice katana and you're golden." You really think it's okay? I don't want to hurt him. See? Izuku laughs. You're warming up already, and a friendly spar never hurt anyone. The others will keep it from going too far. Tanjiro can't help the thrill that shoots through him at the idea. He's not one to admit it, but he does enjoy a good spar. He looks up at Bakugo, who's still glaring at him with his red eyes, and grins. You're on. The tatami mats are cool against Tanjiro's bare feet, a wooden practice katana flipping lazily between his hands. Yayurazu, a pretty girl with black hair and eyes, had made it for him by growing it out of her arm. He's still shocked just thinking about it. Apparently she can create anything she wants from her body fat as long as she knows what it's made of. She'd laughed at the way his jaw dropped, but that kind of power is just insane, and he stands by it. There's a small amalgamation of students around them, talking in groups with some bouncing between them. Tanjiro's pretty sure he saw some kind of currency slipping through a few hands, and he can't help but smile to himself at their enthusiasm. After the initial shock of Izuku not, in fact, being Izuku, they were happy to introduce themselves, and only a few looked at him with suspicion at first. They're all super sweet, though, excluding Shinsu and Bakugo. They just show it in a different way, of course. Like beating someone into the ground, Tanjiro thinks with a smile as Bakugo takes his stance. The students cheer as Ojiru calls for them to start. Izuku is true to his word. Bakugo makes the first move, lunging at him with his right fist swinging. He's fast, but Tanjiro has fought faster and he ducks, slamming the hilt of his blade right under Bakugo's ribs. He feels a little bad as the blonde lets out a sharp wheeze. The feeling evaporates, however, when Bakugo takes barely a second to get his breathing in order and comes at him again with teeth bared. Tanjiro catches another punch with the flat of his blade, locking a leg around Bakugo's ankle and pulling. It knocks him off balance, but just slightly, and Bakugo has no problem using that upset to ram a shoulder right into Tanjiro's collarbone, locking his blade between them. Bakugo is bigger than him, and he knows it, and Tanjiro goes down. He rolls back to his feet in a second. Kadaki-sen had knocked him down more times than he can count, and had been much rougher than that. He comes up behind Bakugo half a second before the blonde is able to turn, striking Bakugo in the side and wincing to himself, knowing the wood of the blade is going to leave a nasty bruise. Bakugo snarls and lashes out with a turning kick. Tanjiro jumps back, slipping to the side to get inside the kick, trying to get to Bakugo's unprotected side, but the boy snaps out a hand and sends an explosion at him. The flash sends black spots careening across his vision, heat washing over his face, and Tanjiro feels his spine hit the mat more than he can see it. He blinks, and Bakugo's face is grinning down at him, one hand braced on his chest. Without a thought, Tanjiro kicks out his legs, hooking them around Bakugo's, using the boy's larger mass to flip them. Inosuke had used that move on him once, and he's honestly amazed he remembered it well enough to execute it. Bakugo doesn't take too kindly to that, slamming his palms onto Tanjiro's chest. He feels his shirt sizzle against his skin as the force of Bakugo's explosions throw him backwards. By some miracle, Tanjiro manages to twist enough to skid onto his feet, one hand dragging against the mats. Bakugo doesn't waste a moment and shoots forward, hands poised behind him fast, too fast, whipping out a fist, his grin open and feral, and then his face is Akaza's, lunging with his eyes full of crazed excitement. Tanjiro doesn't think. His fingers are tight enough to bruise around the hilt of his sword, electricity swarming around him, and then he's moving, feet planted, the words first form ringing in his head along with something else and swinging. Something booms in front of him, sweetly scented smoke brushing past his face, and Tanjiro's vision clears. Bakugo is staring at him, fists still clenched around where Tanjiro's sword used to be. Now the wood is smoldering and splintered, the blade broken halfway down. It feels like the moment lasts forever, the surprised look in Bakugo's eyes seeming to stick to Tanjiro's skin. But then the next thing he knows is he's flat on his back again, Bakugo's forearm lodged against his throat. The first thing Tanjiro thinks is a mortified and still slightly shell-shocked, "Oh my god," because had Bakugo not reacted that quickly, he could have actually hurt the kid. The second is, we should never fight Bakugo again. Agreed, Izuku chokes out. It had been him that was trying to talk to him, Tanjiro realizes. Who else? As Izuku would say, how the turntables. Bakugo offers Tanjiro a hand up, and he takes it amidst the hollering from Izuku's classmates. He can't help but jump as someone claps him on the back, gritting his teeth to stop himself from grabbing Kirishima's wrist. He shouldn't be this on edge, and he forces down the adrenaline thrumming in his veins. You almost had him there, dude, Kirishima exclaims. No one but Midabro has been able to get that close. Holy hell, so manly. Tanjiro smiles tiredly, not completely able to loosen his grip on the ruined practice sword. I've got a fair bit of combat experience. That's so cool, Kaminari pumps a fist in the air. I totally thought you'd win. That was a dirty move he pulled with your sword. But man, did it work? Splinters everywhere, he mutters under his breath. Just like my yen is going to be. It was smart, Tanjiro agrees easily, though he doesn't miss the way Shinsu and Todoroki glance at each other. There's no way that nobody noticed Tanjiro's slip-up, especially since some of them are more combat-oriented than others. Still, it makes him cringe. It was not a slip-up, Izuku says fiercely. Or at least, it wasn't your fault. It happens to me, too. Side effect of having things try to kill you and people you love, huh? Tanjiro jokes weakly. I'm fine. He just surprised me, that's all. I wasn't really ready, he trails off, biting his lip. It wasn't that long ago, that's all. Izuku hums in acknowledgement as Tanjiro hands off the ruined practice katana to Yaoyorozu. That was indeed cool, she says, smiling. I'm a fencer myself, which I know isn't the same thing, but it was nice to see some representation. Tanjiro smiles back and thanks her, even though he doesn't know what fencing is. He glances at Bakugo to find him already watching him, arms crossed over his chest, even as Kirishima chatters next to him. Tanjiro winces internally. He should probably apologize, at least. He starts to make his way over there, but a hand landing on his arm stops him. Ashido, the pink-skinned girl, says something about showing him around campus, and Tanjiro mouths, sorry, at Bakugo before he's dragged away. The campus is definitely pretty, green grass rolling in waves across the ground, shaded by trees with reaching branches. It's by no means wild. Of course, Tanjiro can tell that just by the vibe in the air. To him, the most impressive thing about it are the buildings. He'd passed by the school on the way to the gym, but now that he's closer he can see that Yua is, in one word, huge, easily larger than any building he's seen in his time, or even in Izuku's time. It's almost two separate buildings entirely, if not for the walkways connecting the two main structures. Tanjiro gazes up at them, imagining how dizzy he'd feel walking all the way up there, not to mention he'd probably get lost as soon as he enters the place. It's really big, right? Siro smiles at him. Don't worry, standard buildings aren't like this. Yua is just massively rich. Tanjiro opens his mouth to comment, but Kaminari flails his arms between them, making an X sign with his forearms. Hey, time out, hold up. Bakubro said you're training to be a hero, too, right? What school do you go to? No school for me, Tanjiro says, smiling at him. I didn't even realize that was a thing until Izuku. I'm actually already a hero, so I'm on the road more often than not. The others whip towards him, looking at Tanjiro like he'd hung the stars. It makes him feel uncomfortable and fake, some sort of imposter, because these kids are staring like he's some sort of precious anomaly when in reality, all he is a desperate teenager barely staying alive from fight to fight, chasing after one singular demon because he wouldn't know what to do with his life otherwise. He wants to tell them that there isn't anything praiseworthy about him, that he'd give up whatever momentum is keeping him alive right now 100 times over, if it meant keeping these kids from following in his footsteps. You guys are protecting humanity. If only protecting humanity was as glorious and honorable as it's made out to be. Instead, Tanjiro has rough palms and thick scars and grief to last a lifetime. He shakes himself out of the spiral with a physical shake of his head, shoving the thoughts back into their appropriate box. The flow of time waits for no one. It won't patiently stand by as you grieve. Now is definitely not the time to be lamentful. This is his life, and he's accomplished more than he could have ever dreamed of. So he meets Kirishima's eyes with a light expression as the boy exclaims, "Dude, that is amazing. You're, what, our age and you're already a hero? That's the manliest thing I've ever heard." Tanjiro laughs, finding that it feels real, a small blush rising in his face. "Oh, thanks. Are you, like, the youngest hero ever or something?" Mina asks, dark eyes wide. "The youngest one we have is Hawks, who reached the top 3 when he was only 22, so you must be." Ah, no, actually, Tanjiro tells her. The Mist Hashira is 14, so a year younger than me and one of the elite, heroes. Holy shit, 14? Kaminari groans theatrically, throwing his arms up in the air. These guys are beating us by a landslide. We won't graduate for another 2 years. Good, Tanjiro thinks to himself. You've fought too much already. It hasn't been the easiest year, Izuku murmurs. I can imagine, Tanjiro says, hand drifting to the massive scar Izuku usually keeps covered on his upper arm, of which was probably nearly destroyed when attaining it. He glances over at Bakugo, who's watching him back with narrowed eyes, and Tanjiro quickly drops his hand. So, what's being a hero like? Uraraka asks, eyes shining. Do you save people a lot? Tanjiro truly smiles then. That's an aspect of his job he will forever be proud of. Yes, I've saved many people. My team and I, dismantled a train that a villain had taken over that had 200 civilian passengers. Another hero was on scene, too, one of the elite ones I talked about, and he protected every single one of them. Damn, Tanjiro, that's badass, Zero high-fives him, grinning. I can't wait till I get to do stuff like that. You got any sick scars from fights? Jiro asks, her eyes flickering down to Izuku's own scarred hands. Oh, yeah, a big one up here. Tanjiro traces where his scar would normally be by his hairline. It's originally from accidentally knocking over a boiling kettle, but it got more prominent after a villain smacked my head into a tree. The others laugh and swear, Jiro raising a pointy eyebrow at him, until Todoroki locks eyes with him from across the group. Oh, you too? He says blandly. Tanjiro glances at him, at first confused, but then taking in his burned scar for the second time. It definitely looks more painful than Tanjiro's old one, he thinks with a wince, and it's much bigger. He must have sustained some damage to his eye, the way the scar is centered over it, too. Todoroki doesn't seem perturbed by Tanjiro's studying, and adds as an afterthought. My mom poured the water on me, though. Oh, Tanjiro squeaks out, trying not to let the horror he feels show on his face. That's unfortunate. Kirishima sighs, smacking a hand to his face and shooting Tanjiro an apologetic look through his fingers. Come on, man, we've talked about this. This whole conversation is a god-forsaken train wreck, Tanjiro mourns to Izuku. Take me back now, please. Too bad, I'm having the time of my fucking life over here. Your friends totally don't know how to have discussions like normal people, Izuku calls back, sounding terribly cheerful. It makes Tanjiro want to punch him, just a little bit. I bet, Uraraka swoops in, saving the rest of them from spontaneous combustion via awkwardness, that you haven't had a tour of the school yet. We've even got some of our country's biggest heroes here, on staff. Come on, I'll introduce you. She grabs Tanjiro's wrist with a grip like iron one he's not sure he could break even if he tried, dragging him through the common before he can protest. A couple students tag along, unconcerned and beginning their own conversations again, and Tanjiro thinks that maybe, just maybe, he should have just stayed in Izuku's room. They were clearly glaring at you. Inosuke, who wouldn't glare at an insane boar wannabe who doesn't know what a shirt is? Next time they'll fucking know better because they're gonna watch me punt your sorry ass into the sun. Izuku's pretty sure he can hear Nezuko giggling behind her muzzle along with him. He knocks on the side of the box, grinning, and Nezuko somehow manages to be sassy in her knockback. He's been walking for ages and he's nearly soaked to the bone, but he doesn't think he's laughed this much in months. You don't even know what astronomy is. I don't need fucking bathymetry to fistfight the sun after I toast your ass. No. Yeah, Izuku is never coming back. The school is just as big on the inside, all pure white floors and giant windows. It's also completely empty, making the rooms seem lonely and lacking without students milling about. Tanjiro's footsteps echo on the floor, the voices of those who'd tagged along doubling against the walls. It's almost like he's back in that giant cavern, Tanjiro muses. It's crazy that mankind can build something so large that it follows in nature's footsteps. Here's the cafeteria, Zero says without grandeur, swelling his arms at the neat rows of tables and chairs. Lunch rush makes the most godly food, Uraraka says happily. And it's free, too. We're usually late, though, because of Aizawa-sensei's insane pop quizzes, Ishido says with a sigh. He's scary on a good day, but the bad ones, she shudders dramatically. Hellish. Tanjiro laughs and silently agrees with her. He may have only talked to the famed Aizawa-sensei for, like, 2 seconds, but it was long enough to leave a, lasting impression. Aizawa is like Jiu and Shinazugawa mixed together, a wholeheartedly terrifying combination. By some fate-ordained coincidence, Aizawa isn't actually there when the students lead Tanjiro around the school, poking their heads into classrooms and excitedly giving him rundowns on what each one is. This is where we do study hall. One time, this guy named Mirio scared us all shitless by popping out of the floor and tables and pretending to be a ghost. Mido and Bakubro absolutely fucked this classroom up when they beat each other up one time, etc. It's interesting to him that all these rooms that look somewhat identical hold such different and bizarre memories. Tanjiro can barely remember what he ate for lunch yesterday, if he's being honest. They stop at the teacher's lounge, the others pulling him inside to meet whoever is lingering there or finishing up work over the weekend. There's a good few of them, in fact, and Tanjiro is boisterously greeted by a blonde man who says his hero name is Present Mike. He waves through an office door at a very strange-looking man with a white face and a large coat. Uraraka informs him that he's known as Ectoplasm, and that he teaches them maths. He also meets a short ginger man who introduces himself as Power Loader, and says he oversees the support course, which is later explained as a separate course the school offers other than heroism, where students study and practice building tech for heroes. Izuku happily chatters away in their conjoined mind, offering little facts and tidbits about each hero. He, however, explodes when Tanjiro approaches an absolutely massive man, height-wise, at least. His frame is skeletal, his brow hanging low, but he easily rivals Heinjima in height. He may even be taller than him, by just a bit. Even before his face softens into a toothy smile, Tanjiro knows exactly who he's looking at. All Might, the #1 hero in Japan, the symbol of peace. "Ah, Midoriya, my boy," he says, and wow does Tanjiro feel tiny. "What brings you and your friends here?" "Deku is stuck in the Teisho period," Uraraka announces with a, as Inosuke and/or Izuku would put it, shit-eating grin. "This is Kamado Tanjiro. We're showing him around." Tanjiro is able to fully count to 3 before All Might opens his mouth again, thin features becoming a little baffled. "Oh, well, hello there, Kamado Shounen. I am Toshinori Yagi, or you may call me All Might. It's very nice to meet you." Tanjiro's hand is subsequently crushed in one at least twice the size of his own, but he smiles up at the man anyway. "Hello, All Might-san. It's nice to meet you as well. I've heard a lot about you." He pauses, tilting his head as Izuku Speed talks something at him, which he's completely fluent in at this point. Izuku says hi, too, and that he's doing fine. "That's good to hear," All Might says, his smile turning into something warmer. It wavers after a second, though, and he glances at the students before saying carefully, "Have you had any trouble with Midoriya Shounen's quirk? I know you're not exactly familiar." Tanjiro smiles lopsidedly, understanding the hidden meaning that All Might is trying to convey. "I've only successfully activated it once, so—" "Dude," Kaminari exclaims, eyes going wide. "You can use Midoriya's quirk? Why didn't you say something? I mean, you literally fought Bakubro, who totally went full smash on you, and you didn't say anything." "I don't really know if it's safe yet," Tanjiro answers apologetically, holding up his hands. He keeps going on about being Lord Bonebreaker and everything, and I don't want to be rude and break his arm or something. "Ah, yes, the epitome of rudeness, Kiro," Tsu mumbles, a mischievous look in her green eyes. All Might pats him on the shoulder, which could have knocked him over if he wasn't paying attention. Now, let's not be too hard on Kamado Shounen, this is all new to him. However, if you are interested in figuring it out, my boy, I'd be happy to supervise. Our quirks are quite similar, you know," he offers Tanjiro a god-awful wink. From the corner of his eye, Tanjiro thinks he sees Todoroki pull out a notebook and jot something down. "You don't even have to ask," Izuku pipes up immediately. "You know I've been dying to see how it works with you. Be forewarned, though, that All Might's metaphors don't make any lick of sense. Just ignore him and do your own thing." "Harsh," Tanjiro teases. "Not when he can throw me into orbit," Izuku mutters, and Tanjiro snorts. "Alright, why not?" he concedes to All Might, who gives him that wide, toothy grin back. Back outside the school, far away from the school, in case there's any accidents, Tanjiro stares at Izuku's hands, not quite as rough as his own, though scarred. With Izuku giving small instructions in the back of his mind, Tanjiro tries to recall the feeling of the quirk, that almost physical power inside him. He reaches for it and imagines flipping a switch. With wide eyes, he watches as electricity sparks along his hands, jagged red lines jumping up his arms. It doesn't hurt. In fact, it has a warm, tingly feeling that makes Tanjiro feel like he could sprint 5 miles straight. "You could," Izuku says happily, his presence practically bouncing with excitement. All Might has done incredible things with this quirk. He's changed the weather. The goddamn weather. Tan, how crazy is that? That is pretty insane, Tanjiro admits, smiling at Izuku's enthusiasm. He flexes his fingers, imagining what it would be like to have this strength and a sword in his hand. He slides his feet into a kata and mimes the first form. It feels smoother than ever before, even after learning total concentration constant. He wonders what Jiwoo-san would be capable of with this power, particularly combined with his personal move. He wonders, a little more quietly, what it would feel like to do Hinakami Kagura. "You got this, Tanjiro," Uraraka cheers, though her expression is a little scary. He smiles back, shifting back into a casual stance. He doesn't even know where to begin, and especially not without a sword. "Don't overthink it, my boy," All Might instructs. "How about this? I'll count to 3, and you run over here before I've finished. Ready?" All Might begins to count, and Tanjiro automatically takes a deep breath before running. Everything around him becomes a colorful smear, and the next thing he knows, he's smacking into a tree. "Oh," he hisses to himself as he peels away from the bark. He's pretty sure there's an imprint of it on his face now. Izuku is absolutely losing it on the other side of the bond, making it so that Tanjiro can't help but laugh a little himself. He'd moved way faster than he'd expected, and that tree was placed in a very inopportune spot, okay? Not All Might coughs from a few yards behind him, most definitely covering a laugh. "Not quite like that. Want to try again?" Tanjiro nods, bouncing a bit on the balls of his feet. All Might starts again, and Tanjiro does his best to go just a bit slower this time. He still ends up tripping over All Might's feet and completely eating it on the lawn. He spits grass out of his mouth and flips onto his back, giggling to the sky above. Man, he can't remember the last time he was this damned awful at training. Part of him wishes Urakadaki-san were here to yell at him, but the rest is wholeheartedly relieved that he's not. He'd probably throw Tanjiro off a cliff again on the spot. All Might leans his massive frame over him, offering a hand up. Tanjiro takes it, grinning at the fresh grass stains on Izuku's shirt. "I can't believe that people can actually go that fast," he laughs. "Ida Shounen has car engines in his legs," All Might points out serenely, as if this isn't weird at all, especially anatomy-wise, because what? Midoriya Shounen could probably break the sound barrier if he wanted to. Unfortunately, making coal has nothing to do with sound barriers, so Tanjiro just smiles. He doesn't know how Izuku can stand to not be using his quirk all the time, but then again, maybe he doesn't want to risk slamming his face into various surfaces, as demonstrated by yours truly. "I think I've discovered the problem," Tanjiro says slowly, looking into All Might's shadowed eyes. "How do you stop?" All Might strokes his chin, grinning. "Can't say I ever thought about that. Perhaps if you channel the power into a different movement, your stops won't be powerful enough to do, that." He gestures at Tanjiro's shirt and overall being. The colossal hero backs up to the other side of the lawn to let him try again. Tanjiro shakes out his hands, and the world runs by him again like watery ink. This time when he zips over to All Might, he stills his feet and lets himself bounce a little bit to absorb the remaining energy. Unfortunately, bouncing a little bit sends him 20 feet into the air, and he whacks into the other side of the tree on his way down. Tanjiro groans and does something he's never done in his life. He flips off the tree. Then, realizing what his reaction was, immediately accusing, "You're a bad influence, Izuku." "Profanity is good for the soul," Izuku says sweetly, as if he wouldn't make a dockworker turn pale with that mouth of his. Inosuke is clearly living his best life, giving not one fuck at all and actually saying it. "If Nezuko learns to swear, I'm going to permanently live in your quirk and yell at you till the end of time," Tanjiro warns, smirking and decidedly not moving from his very comfortable position on the ground. "Get in line, bastard," Izuku cackles. "At least I know how to use my quirk." "You're dead to me." All Might's shadow falls over Tanjiro, and he offers a casual wave. All Might waves back with a hand that must be 3 times bigger than his. I'm pretty sure if I tried to use this in my world, I'd die, but the villain would also die from laughing at me. Tanjiro informs him solemnly. A win-win scenario, then, All Might says. His face morphs into shock, then he coughs, blood splattering into his hand. I mean shit, no. Oh my god, Izuku whispers reverently. All Might just made a dark joke. I'm winning him over. Tanjiro lets out a spurt of laughter, covering his face with his hands. He's never going to forgive trees for this. Like, how many has he hit in the past 2 years? It's ridiculous. They must be working with the demons. Somehow. Maybe stop hitting trees, dumbass, Izuku tells him. Oh, okay, thank you. Tanjiro snarks back. I'll tuck that advice right next to stay away from demons. Perhaps if I gather enough pieces of such enlightened information, I can keep you from being so stupid. Izuku positively wheezes. That's the spirit. You're going to be a spirit if the first thing Nezuko says is fuck. Tanjiro claps a hand over his mouth, eyes going as wide as saucers. No, wait. You said it. Izuku whoops and throws his hands up in victory. My life is fulfilled. I hate you. I love you too. Tanjiro groans again, louder this time, though he's grinning. He stands up, still a little shocked at the way he doesn't even come up to All Might's chest. Your quirk is incredible, he tells the man honestly. I can't imagine how long it would take to get used to power like that. All Might stares at him, then quickly glances toward the other students, dropping his voice. You know? Tanjiro nods. It's a little hard to keep secrets in here, he taps his temple with a smile. Plus, I met the others, since I'm intruding a bit on them, too. The others? All Might seems confused for a moment, before realization spreads across his skeletal face. Ah, the vestiges. That's right. Izuku-kun told me about that. How? Were they? Tanjiro tilts his head. They're fine. Well, they're dead, but they're fine. It was an interesting experience. I've only talked to ghosts once before that, though I didn't know they were ghosts at the time. He thinks of Makomo's teal eyes and sweetly blunt words, of Sabito's wild red hair and sad smile. He doesn't feel like he has a right to miss them, since he never knew them in life, but he does anyway. Good. That's good. All Might lets out a breath, face solemn for a moment when he forgets to smile. I suppose this won't be the last time we see each other then, huh, Tanjiro Shounen? Tanjiro smiles, soft and understanding. They call me negative. All Might extends his thin hand, and Tanjiro takes it. And I eighth. They shake, and now Tanjiro knows what that glowing figure on the throne was. He stares up at the giant man, imagining his hero form, and knows those are large footsteps for Izuku to fill in. Tanjiro doesn't doubt him for a second, though. It's still raining, though it's slowed more to a drizzle now. Izuku and the rest of Tanjiro's group have hit a town, meandering their way through the main thoroughfare, cloth and streamers stretched between the rooftops above keeping most of the rain away. They must be having some sort of festival despite the weather. Glancing up at the expanse of clouds and cloth, Izuku peeks into Nezuko's box. How's it going in there? He asks with a smile. You think it's okay for you to take a break? Nezuko peers out, pink eyes big, and experimentally sticking a hand out. Nothing happens, and her eyes squish up with a hidden smile. Izuku lets her grab onto his arm, since she's still in her childlike form, and hoists her onto his shoulders. Awa, Nezuko-chan, Zenitsu calls, waving like a maniac from behind them, his face nearly all smile. Your bow looks so cute today, Nezuko-chan. Izuku glances up, smiling himself as Nezuko's eyes shine, and she pokes the bow in her hair. After a second, she kicks her feet and looks down at Izuku expectantly. He laughs softly and continues walking, pointing out a streamer that matches the pink of her kimono. The air smells like petrichor and desserts and happiness, villagers milling around them talking and laughing loudly, unashamed with the atmosphere of festivities around them. It's a sweet sight after seeing nothing but rice fields and trees, even if they are pretty. Vendors holler from the sides of the street, boasting their wares or food. Inosuke drags Zenitsu over to one and makes the blonde pay for his grilled squid with much whining and squabbling. Izuku decides to stay out of that one, instead chatting quietly to Nezuko as she plays with his hair. He's thought about siblings before, of course what only child hasn't. He'd imagined older brothers who'd beat up the bullies for him, older sisters who'd coddle and needle him and give him hair advice, even younger siblings that would look up to him and think he was amazing even if he was quirkless. It was childish, sure, but he had been a child at the time. He can't say he wonders about such things anymore, at least not after he met his friends. Part of him does still wonder, still feels a little pang when his friends talk about their siblings, because throughout his entire life, all Izuku wanted was someone who would love him even if he didn't have a quirk. He hates that he has such doubts about his friends after all they've been through together, but would they? Would they still be close to him if he was nothing but quirkless Deku, if he didn't have one of the most powerful quirks in the world? Nezuko grows enough to drop her head in front of his, hair falling past her face as she hangs partially upside down. Her pink eyes are curious, as if she can sense the path Izuku's thoughts had taken. She's so expressive, he thinks with a smile. Even without words, it's easy to tell what she's thinking. Nezuko smiles back, her cheeks squishing up, and Izuku feels something warm light in his chest. He reaches up and flips her over his shoulders, placing her on the ground. Her coat trails over her little limbs as she looks up at him, and Izuku puts a knee down to fix the bow in her hair that had nearly come undone. She smiles so wide at him that her eyes close, grabbing his hand as he straightens up. She pulls him along like that, nearly bouncing with excitement as she flits between stalls and vendors. Izuku watches her, her tiny hand locked in his. He thinks of Tanjiro's warm and steady presence, his dry humor and sassy jabs once they were comfortable together. The protectiveness that led to them almost breaking the quirk even though they'd known each other for barely a day at that point. The kindness that he radiates and realizes maybe he's found something like siblings, after all. He nearly cries, to Nezuko's worriment, but all he can do is crouch down and hug her and hope to the stars that he'll have the chance to do the same with Tanjiro, somehow, because he can't even begin to explain how much they mean to him. It's later in the day now, and Tanjiro has just managed to escape Izuku's friends after lunch. They're great, of course they are, kind and accepting and not shunning him for not having a quirk of his own. They're also just a lot, especially with the large number of them. Tanjiro admits he'd like a little time to catch his breath, and slips away back to Izuku's room. He doesn't dare attempt the sliding doors of what is apparently called an elevator, instead using the stairs in the same way he came down. As soon as he leaves the ground floor, everything seems incredibly quiet, only faint wisps of the chatter downstairs making it up to join him. It takes him a moment to remember which floor Izuku's room is on, which Izuku helpfully supplies. He pauses next to the door, reading the plaque of the one just to the right and realizing that Shinsu lives right next door. Funny how things work out that way. Izuku's room just has an atmosphere of chillness, of staying up late and quiet voices and trying to muffle laughter after hours. He plops into Izuku's desk chair, exhaling softly. This time is awesome, with so much new tech and buildings and quirks, but it's also, like, everything. There's so much going on at one time everywhere that it's a bit overwhelming. Tanjiro is used to the stillness of forests, the forgotten loneliness of mountains, small villages with calling voices and birdsong, while there's definitely a certain allure to places like Tokyo, and here, Tanjiro finds that he misses the quiet moments with nothing but himself, his sister, and the sky above. Still, he thinks with a smile, he's happy to have experienced this side of the world, too. Settling into the chair, Tanjiro, with express permission from Izuku, of course reaches for the shelf above holding dozens of notebooks, and begins to read. Almost an hour later, a knock comes on the door, making Tanjiro jump. Clearing his throat quickly and pulling his mind away from the world of quirk analysis, he squeaks out, "Come in." Izuku's Aizawa-sensei appears from behind the door, because of course. He blinks at Tanjiro in a way that reminds him of a cat. "Tsukachi called, said he wants to talk to you. You ready?" Tanjiro glances down at himself, at the strange knot pants with a lot of pockets, and the black shirt boasting some sort of yellow symbol with lettering in another language around it. He has no clue what it says, and hopes he's inhabiting the clothes as well as Izuku does. He tries to mince his apparent accent as much as he can when he speaks again. "Yeah, let's go." "Problem child," Aizawa says, raising his eyebrows like there's something else. Tanjiro looks at him blankly. Aizawa sighs, nodding to his feet. "Shoes, Midoriya." Tanjiro flushes, a small nervous laugh bubbling from his throat. "Oh, yeah. Sorry, sensei. He spots what are probably shoes by the door, bright red with weird sort of strings on the top. For tightening, he guesses, though they're already tied. It's not too hard to slip them on, and he tells Izuku, "Your shoe habits just saved my life." Izuku laughs. You're technically supposed to undo the laces when you're not wearing them, but who has time for that, honestly? Oh, and fair warning, Tsukachi is literally a human lie detector. His quirk tells him when someone is telling the truth or not, so you have to be honest or else he'll know. Tanjiro grimaces, trying not to look at Aizawa. So, I have to tell him I'm not you. I mean, not necessarily, Izuku hedges. It just spends on what he asks. Probably, though. Tanjiro sighs, but follows Aizawa out, trying not to show his awe at the giant building he's inside. He's been here briefly before, yes, but it's still a shocking sight. And there's so many things he doesn't recognize. The box showing moving pictures of people, the strange glowing device in a student's hand, the beeping sound going off before another student opens a mini door of another weird box in the kitchen. Tanjiro marvels at the technology that humans will have and the slayers they're so obviously lacking. He misses his katana in that moment, and his Haori and uniform boasting all slayers' intent, destroy. He can't say that he ever thought he would miss such things. His involvement in the Demon Slayer Corps was just what he had to do to get on Musen's trail and try to help Nezuko. Of course, he doesn't regret his choice, and he knows he's helping edge them towards a better world. He wonders, sometimes, if he would have somehow ended up in the Corps some way or another if his family hadn't been killed. Honestly, he hopes not. He doesn't think he'd have any motive. He doesn't hate demons the way some slayers do. They deserve respect for the humanity they lost. And he prays for every demon he kills that they will find some semblance of peace, wherever they go next. Tanjiro does, however, hate Musen, and he will do anything to stop the horrible creature from hurting anyone else. Following Aizawa through a pair of massive gates, he walks onto a flat, black area. Many different vehicles sit side by side here, and Tanjiro stares at them. He knows of cars, has seen a few here and there in more populated districts, but these look nothing like any of the ones he's seen. These are sleeker, more enclosed, and he can see different types and colors just in this one spot. How many people these days own one of these? Midoriya, Aizawa calls over from where he's leaning on the side of one of the cars, door held propped open by his elbow. It takes Tanjiro a second to register that Aizawa is talking to him, since he is not in fact Midoriya. He jogs over to Izuku's sensei, catching a glimpse of a smooth seat in the interior of the car, and in front of it what he assumes is the steering device. He sees another seat on the other side, so he quickly wraps around the car to reach it. It takes him a few moments to figure out how to open the car door, Izuku giggling at him the entire time. Very helpful, Tanjiro grumbles to him as he slides into the seat. Aizawa is already seated across from him, seemingly waiting for something. Now what do I do? Buckle your seatbelt, Izuku tells him, still clearly amused. He directs Tanjiro through the motions of it, and he's got it snapped into place in only a few seconds. Aizawa inserts a key into a slot by the steering device, turning it until a deep rumble vibrates through the car. Tanjiro jumps slightly at the sudden dim roar, and Aizawa already has the car moving. Besides having no clue what modern car etiquette is, Tanjiro finds that he actually kind of likes being in it. It's like a mini train all in itself. He can watch buildings and people pass by out the window, and quiet music is playing from somewhere in the car. It sounds similar to what Izuku was listening to that one time. It feels like weeks ago that happened, Tanjiro thinks fondly, even though it's only been a handful of days. He keeps himself nearly pressed to the window for the entirety of the ride. He's never even imagined a city like this. The buildings are matte but huge, and there's so many people. People walking, people chatting outside of storefronts, little carts selling food and people hollering as they push them. Tanjiro watches as a little girl chases who he assumes is her older brother, mouth wide with laughter and hands outstretched. Tanjiro can tell that this is just everyday things for these people, but to him, it's mind-blowing. He can't help but feel a little proud as he takes it all in. They did this? They helped bring this age along. No one here lives in fear of demons any longer. They all have abilities that can rival a demon's instead. Of course, he knows that they have their own problems. Humans are human, after all, and the whole hero thing doesn't exist for no reason. Still, the fact that they were able to move on and have those new problems, it's nothing short of incredible to Tanjiro. It means they won. They pull up to a sprawling gray and blue building, and Aizawa stops the car. Tanjiro figures out the door much faster this time, hopping out to meet Aizawa on the raised walkway. Inside, a female officer leads them down a few identical hallways until she raps her knuckles on a door, poking her head in. Midoriya, Izuku, and Aizawa shout out to see you, Sakachi. The man sitting behind the desk is honestly kind of shockingly plain compared to other appearances Tanjiro has seen in this time. Sakachi is clean-shaven with simple dark eyes and straight brown hair. His smile is genuine and kind, though, and it sets Tanjiro a little more at ease. Hello, Aizawa, Midoriya, Sakachi greets warmly, standing to bow. Tanjiro and Aizawa reciprocate. It's been a while. Staying out of trouble besides the current predicament, Midoriya? Tanjiro smiles. Izu must really have a reputation. As much as I can, sir. Well, go ahead and sit down, and we can get started, Sakachi waves to the other chairs as he sits back down, pulling a notebook and pen from a drawer. Tanjiro and Aizawa follow suit. You both know how my quirk works, but just to make sure, can you tell me your name? He looks at Tanjiro as he says this, and Tanjiro forces down a sudden swell of anxiety, sighing internally. Not Izuku, he replies with a weak smile. Sakachi freezes, staring at him, and Aizawa lifts a hand to pinch at the bridge of his nose, muttering a wholeheartedly exasperated, "Problem child." Right, Sakachi says cautiously, eyes flickering to Aizawa before scribbling something on his pad. Aizawa did say something about switching. I guess we'll have to go about this a little differently. Then, what's your name? Kamado Tanjiro, Tanjiro admits, glancing at Aizawa. He's still pinching the bridge of his nose, and Tanjiro wonders if he should help him collect retirement funds. Suitsuchi blinks at him, before apparently shaking himself and noting this. Okay, and when did you switch with Midoriya? This morning. How many times have you guys switched? This would be the, third time. Tanjiro runs an awkward hand through his hair, noticing that Aizawa had finally dropped his. Second, that's independent of Shinsu. Sakachi gives a contemplative hum that reveals nothing, glancing up at him. How has the quirk affected you, Kamado? Tanjiro takes a second to think. There really hasn't been much that's changed for him, except the, telepathy thing. Just the same as Izuku, I think, being in each other's heads and all. It hasn't been that bad. Wow, thanks, Izuku grumbles, and Tanjiro suppresses a smile. Yes, the quirk enables you to actively communicate with Midoriya, right? Sakachi asks, actually seeming interested. Have you had any issues with that, or noticed any sort of limitations? Tanjiro starts to shake his head, then hesitates, memories of their first day together flashing by. There was only one time when I couldn't. Well, two if you count Shinsu, but after he got hit, Izuku initially tried to push me away. Then there was a few seconds I wasn't able to reach him. It was like his mind was trapped in fog. Izuku said that he couldn't think during that time, either. So there's a negative drawback if you try to resist, Aizawa speaks up from beside him, his voice a deep rumble that almost makes Tanjiro jump. Sakachi nods in response, writing that down. As he does so, he comments, You seem to be fairly close with Midoriya. There's something there that feels loaded, and Tanjiro frowns slightly as he confirms. Sakachi finishes his note, looking straight at Tanjiro. Do you seek to harm him in any way, presently or in the future? Tanjiro balks in his seat, feeling his eyes blow wide. Absolutely not, he exclaims, flushing as it comes out a little louder than he meant to. He drops his voice to a more manageable volume as he continues. Izuku and I are friends. I'd protect him with my life if I had to. A few beats pass in silence as Sakachi considers this. Aizawa shifts ever so slightly next to Tanjiro, looking to the other man. Sakachi nods, eyes softening as a small smile plays on his lips. Aizawa blinks back in that cat-like way of his, and Tanjiro figures this means he's in the clear. All right, Ben, Sakachi settles back into his chair, his tone returning to amicable. Looks like we're all on the same page. I do, however, have reports of an injury that was on your end, but affected both of you, correct? Want to walk me through that? Tanjiro bites the inside of his cheek, casting a narrow-eyed glance at Aizawa. Izuku's sensei meets his gaze head-on, unapologetic. Yes, Tanjiro says slowly, trying to figure out how to go about this without completely spilling everything. It wasn't intentional, if that's what you're asking. But it was bad enough that it caused Midoriya to black out, Tsukachi prompts, clearly not letting him move past the issue. Tanjiro purses his lips, unhappy at the memory of it. If he'd just been a little more careful, damn it. It was not your fault, Izuku pipes up sternly. I've said it once and I'll say it again. You were just doing your job. It shouldn't have happened at all, though, Tanjiro sighs, gut clenching with the guilt that still lingers. I was being stupid. I've fought much stronger demons than him. I should have known he had something up his sleeve. They always do. Yeah, but you also had a me in your head, and that's not normal, Izuku argues back. It's fine, Tan. I'm fine. Just let it go, okay? Tanjiro sighs, not sure that he'll just be able to like that. I promise I'll try. Kamado? Tsukachi's voice tugs him out of his head, and Tanjiro jumps a bit. He quickly mumbles out an apology, face heating, but Tsukachi waves him off. It's okay. Were you communicating to Midoriya just now? Tanjiro nods. Yeah, he was just... Anyway, yes, Izuku was affected. At that point, the quirk had connected us, pretty much fully. Our minds and bodies were tied closely enough that when I lost consciousness, he did, too. Like I said, though, that wasn't my intention. Tsukachi opens his mouth to ask another question, but Aizawa cuts him off, turning in his chair to look at Tanjiro. What was your intention? Tanjiro opens his mouth, then closes it, unsure. There's no good way out of this, not without mentioning the demon. He sneaks a glance at Tsukachi, then decides to skirt around the question. Not getting injured in that fight. Aizawa raises an eyebrow at him in a pointy sort of way, but thankfully all he says is, Did you win? Tanjiro smiles at him, feeling that he's starting to understand Izuku's sensei. I did. Can I ask what it was that you were fighting? Tsukachi says. A monster? It comes out like a question, and Tanjiro rushes to rectify that. Izuku said that they're like something called Namu, I think? You were fighting something like a Namu all by yourself? Aizawa cuts back in sharply, the second eyebrow rising to meet the first one. Tanjiro shakes his head quickly, hands coming up apologetically. Oh, no, I had my 2 friends and my sister with me. We tracked it to this cave, you see, and failed to sneak up on it. It had an unfortunate amount of arms, so it went a little rougher than intended. He blinks at the 2 expressions of bafflement turned towards him and smiles nervously. I'm fine, though. He winces at the silence that follows his rushed statement, wishing that he had his nose. If he could figure out their emotions, then he'd know how to diffuse the sudden tension stringing the air. As it was, though, all he can do is fidget in his seat and wait for them to voice their own thoughts. Aizawa speaks first, his incredulous tone the most emotion Tanjiro's heard from him today. You intentionally fought a Namu? Well, demon, Tanjiro corrects, forcing false cheer into his voice. That's what we call them, and, it's actually kind of my job, so yeah, damn it. Why did he have to absorb Izuku's social awkwardness right now? He supposes it doesn't help that he's in an unfamiliar world with 2 men he doesn't know, but still. Your job is to fight Namu like monsters, Aizawa repeats flatly, and Tanjiro fights back a wince. Remind me how old you are again. Tanjiro sighs, knowing this was coming. 15, sir. And who gave you this job? Aizawa sounds close to losing his deadpan intonation, and Tanjiro's not sure he wants to be here when he does. I work for the Demon Slayer Corps, Tanjiro tells him reluctantly. If you're wondering, I went on my own volition. I trained, too, and passed the final selection, so there's no reason I shouldn't be there. No offense, sir, but I know my way around demons. I've killed a good number of them myself. Aizawa just stares at him. He moves to share a suffering look with Tsukachi, then goes back to staring at him. Finally, he mutters, God save me from kids with no self-preservation. He straightens up suddenly, turning fully to face Tanjiro. These demons? Is Midoriya in danger of running into one? Tanjiro mouths a silent "oh." He'd considered that fact, yes, and in a world without his quirk, no, Izuku would be fine. Chances are they'd switch back before nightfall, and he's not alone. He should be okay, he tells Aizawa confidently. They burn in the sunlight, so they generally only come out at night. And if on the very slim chance Izuku somehow finds one, There's 2 other competent slayers and my sister with him that can take care of it. As long as it's not an upper moon. Aizawa sighs deeply, crossing his arms over his chest. With the problem child's luck, he'll probably attract the most powerful one within the hour. Oh, probably not. I hope not. Anyway, Tanjiro smiles at Aizawa with a few too many teeth. I'm going to be the one to kill him. Aizawa narrows his eyes at him. He starts to say something, but Shukachi clears his throat pointedly, tapping his pen on his notepad. He gives Aizawa a look before his features settle back into neutrality. Good to know. Kamado, thank you, he says, placing his elbows on his desk and leaning forward. Anyway, there's a few things I wanted to address, namely. The door bursts open, slamming against the wall hard enough to leave a dent and revealing the female officer from earlier. Her hair now a mess. She opens her mouth, expression panicked. And at that same moment, Izuku screams. And then I was like, Tenotsu, that's a goddamn fish. And he said something really fucking stupid like, I know. So obviously I had to beat his ass. And then Inosuke is walking next to him, animatedly recounting a fight he and Zenitsu apparently had. He'd been aghast when Izuku had said he didn't remember anything of the sort, giggling mentally as he'd done so, of course, and had taken the liberty of enlightening Izuku onto his shoulders. Izuku probably shouldn't be enjoying this, but he definitely is. It's been a pretty drowsy day of the 3 of them wandering along the road, rain gently pattering on their heads as the forest thickens around them, plus Zenitsu's face the entire time has been priceless. That's not what happened, he whines from Izuku's other side. Inosuke is being bull-headed, as usual. It's a bore, you ignorant fuck, Inosuke shouts back with absolutely no hesitation. Izuku has to sink his teeth into his lip to keep himself from laughing, though he still feels like he's about to explode. Inosuke and Zenitsu are really, really good at making you want to either laugh or scream, and there's no in-between. He knows from personal experience that Tanjiro has almost godlike patience, however, so he's probably the only one who can actually tolerate these 2. Shut up, Zenitsu mumbles, eyes glossing over even as his cheeks are flushed with annoyance. Izuku can relate. If you ever encounter an angry Izuku who's not crying, then you've really pissed him off. Aw, someone can dish it but can't take it, Inosuke teases. Fucking imagine that. On Izuku's right, Zenitsu has gone stock still. Inosuke, shut up, he snaps, and his tone lacks his usual whine. A chill runs up Izuku's spine, and Inosuke stops talking, hands freezing mid-gesture. There's something in the woods. Izuku sucks in a sharp breath. He means something as in demon, doesn't he? But Tanjiro said they can't be out in the day because sunlight burns. His thought stops abruptly as he feels another raindrop hit his face. Oh, there is no sunlight right now. None that can make it through the storm clouds, at least, and that means demons can come out, doesn't it? As soon as the realization hits him, so does an awful stench. Izuku clamps a hand over his nose on instinct, almost gagging at the decay, and something he can only describe as evil permeates the air. Next to him, he hears twin shings, as Inosuke pulls out his chipped blades. Izuku turns as slowly as he dares, searching as the scent grows stronger until his eyes throb. There's nothing. He can't see anything, but he can smell it and Zenitsu can hear it, so it has to be their psalm. Something darts past him, too fast to see. And then pain blooms in his leg and the world is turning upside down as he's flung roughly upwards. He can't help the small scream that escapes his lips as his vision blurs, struggling to acclimate as everything spins around him. Nezuko's box slips from his back and he makes a blind grab for it, straps just slipping through his fingers. The wind whistles past his ears and tears through his hair, and he thinks he knows what's going on. The ground being all too far away just confirms it. He reaches for one for all automatically, and sparks dance across his skin, irritated and erratic, and he can't control them, not like this. Shit, Izuku swears, the words lost to the wind as he flails in the air. What must be the demon's talons dig into his leg, swinging him around like some sort of cursed piranha. Izuku has to fling himself as best he can to the side to avoid a tree that he would have fully smacked into and probably died. What? Tanjiro's voice yells, making Izuku wince. What's happening? Oh, nothing, Izuku grinds out, trying to reach the demon's clawed foot. Just hanging around with a demon, trying to keep it from dropping me on my head. You know, the norm. What? Tanjiro exclaims, shock seeping through to Izuku. It's daytime. It's also raining, Izuku shouts back, though he's not really sure why. There's no need for volume in telepathic conversations, but he's panicking, okay? It's cloudy, Tanjiro thinks, horrified. He apparently hadn't accounted for that in all his musings of Izuku-demon interactions. Where are the others? Izuku's fingers skim the demon's claw, but the rain makes it too slick to grab a hold of. Back on the ground, where I wish I was. Oh, damn it, Tanjiro hisses, and the sound of him swearing almost makes Izuku laugh. Probably a hysterical I'm going to die laugh, but one nonetheless. Alright, enough of that, he tells himself. If there's one thing he learned from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy other than amazing David Bowie metaphors, it's obviously don't panic. Time to actually do something. He can't really reach the demon with his hands, and trying to mess with its grip will most likely just make it drop him, which he very much doesn't want. Trying to figure out his distance from the ground just makes him nauseous. It's all too reminiscent of the Namu that grabbed him after the fight with Sane. Izuku has never understood Tanjiro more than in this moment. Still, he has to get down somehow. Preferably quickly, but not as quickly as him falling, of course. But if Izuku could damage the demon's wing, it could potentially get him down with minimal harm, or it could send them both careening into a tree. And he may smack into a tree anyway, so it's a risk Izuku is willing to take. His fingers scrabble on the hilt of Tanjiro's katana before finding purchase. It's definitely something, trying to unsheath a sword whilst upside down, but Izuku manages it without stabbing himself, which he feels is a victory in itself. He wraps his fingers as tightly around the hilt as he can, the edge of the black blade glinting in the sunlight. With a grunt, he flings himself upward as much as he can and swings. The sword hits the demon head-on, slicing through muscle and tendon like butter and scraping against bone with a sickening nails on chalkboard sound. The demon screams, wheeling on one wing in a lopsided arc for a few long seconds before wind whistles in Izuku's ears. His heart leaps into his throat, and he nearly loses his grip on Tanjiro's sword because now he's falling. And the demon is falling with him, claws still buried in Izuku's leg, straining its other wing desperately. Izuku realizes that the demon doesn't want to be flattened on a tree just as much as he does. It lets out a frantic, animalistic growl and snaps at Izuku's head, but thankfully misses due to them careening through the air. There's only one way for Izuku to get out of this even remotely alive. He has the thought just as he hits the treetops, his side slamming into a tree branch with a crunch that can't mean anything good, actually dropping Tanjiro's sword this time before he rolls off and continues his descent. He has mere seconds to get this right. Using the leg that's still in the demon's grasp as leverage, he twists, flipping himself over top the demon and grabs the back of its neck with both hands, squeezing as much as he dares. The demon lets out garbling noise and flails, bat-like hands scratching at Izuku's face. He grits his teeth and doesn't let go. And then they hit the ground. Izuku's not likely to forget the awful squelch that sinks around him as the demon is smashed beneath him. Dark blood splatters onto Izuku's hands and face, and even though his leg is aching, he can't get away fast enough. He knows it's a monster. He knows that he had no choice, but the sight of the creature broken and flattened, limbs shattered and its head caved in as crimson soaks the ground beneath it. Izuku doubles over and vomits onto the grass. It's okay, Tanjiro soothes as best he can, the warmth of his presence flaring. I know, Izu, I know. It's abhorrent, but you did good. You did what you had to do. I need you to listen, okay? Go find the others. The demon will probably stay down for a bit, but it's not dead yet, so you need to get back to the others. They can deal with it, alright? Izuku pants, arms still wrapped around his stomach. He spits out another mouthful of bile, carefully keeping his gaze away from the mess of a corpse. It's not dead, he whispers in horror. That means it's alive as its skull is broken, as its wings and legs are twisted with bones splintered through its... Izuku. Tanjiro doesn't yell, but his voice seems to reverberate through Izuku's head, sending phantom vibrations down his spine. You need to go, otherwise that thing's going to get back up and attack again. Listen to me and run. Izuku forces himself to breathe, squeezing his eyes shut as he straightens up. He stumbles away, one jerky step at a time, until he finds himself in something like a run. His leg sends sharp, crawling pains up into his chest with every step. His lungs feel painfully tight and he's gasping for air, but he keeps going, waiting and searching for the sense of Inosuke and Zenitsu to let him know where they are. Something blurs past him, black and red and blue and fast. There's a hand on his shoulder for the briefest of moments, a blink of a blade, before Izuku is alone again. He skids to a messy stop, barely feeling the bark of the tree he braces a hand against. From behind him comes a small warbling sound, and then the only thing to hear are the leaves whispering to each other. The scent of the demon behind him starts to lessen, as if swept away by the breeze until there's nothing but the aftertaste of rot clinging to the back of Izuku's throat. He sinks to his knees, his breathing still feeling tight, dragging his hand down the tree with him. There's blood dripping down the white clasps that taper his pants, little beads of crimson sliding against the cloth and dotting the ground beneath him. He couldn't do it. In the end, he couldn't do it. Instead of killing the demon, he'd left it and ran. He'd even dropped Tanjiro's sword when he'd hit the tree on the way down. Izuku always thought that if he had to, he could kill. And yeah, he almost had, but he couldn't finish it. He couldn't even get his head on straight enough to look for the sword. "It's okay, Izuku," Tanjiro whispers soothingly. "I didn't expect you to. I couldn't kill the first demon I encountered, either. Our hands aren't made for weapons, huh?" And yet, Izuku can't escape them. He's always been softer than others, someone who cries easily and often, someone who always extends a hand in kindness before even thinking of using that hand to attack. But he's been forced to in the past, and he knows he'll have to again. He's too soft, too hesitant to fight when he can help instead, and he doesn't want that to change. Ever since the training camp, ever since he almost killed a man, Izuku can feel that nature slowly slipping away, hardening into something else, and it scares him. "Tanjiro," a voice says, smooth and deep and unfamiliar. It takes a second for it to register, for Izuku to remember that right now he isn't himself. He looks up to meet the eyes of a young man crouching in front of him. Long, spiky black hair is pulled away from his face in a way that reminds Izuku of Aizawa-sensei, and his haori is split down the middle, with red on one side and a geometric pattern of green and yellow on the other. His eyes have no pupils and are a strange, solid midnight blue color that watches Izuku steadily. He can't help getting a little transfixed by them. "Jiwoo-san," Tanjiro says, relief bleeding through his thoughts. Ah, so it really is his equivalent of Aizawa-sensei. The midnight eyes narrow when Izuku doesn't respond, flickering down to his calf before settling on his face again. "What's wrong?" Jiwoo asks, his voice having almost no inflection entirely. "Where's your sword?" Izuku digs his fingers into the tree bark, willing himself not to lose control. "Dropped it," he mutters, ducking his head. "When it dropped me." Jiwoo's brow furrows the tiniest bit as he studies Izuku. He can tell, Izuku thinks with dread coiling in his stomach. He can tell that Tanjiro isn't here. He opens his mouth to respond right as Zenitsu crashes through the foliage with Nezuko's box on his back and Inosuke on his heels with swords drawn. Zenitsu catches sight of him and immediately starts crying, flopping down next to him and grabbing a handful of his haori. "ITH thought I'd killed you," he wails, altogether too close to Izuku's ear. Inosuke cackles and thumps him on the back, causing Izuku to wince. "Knew you wouldn't bite it, you crazy bastard." "Are you injured?" Jiwoo interrupts their oh-so-passionate reunion. He's still watching Izuku, and his eyes are now more unnerving than anything. Izuku glances down, trying not to stare too hard at his bloodied calf. His chest hurts and his head aches, and he still can't breathe right, breaths coming in with little gasps and wheezes. The remnants of adrenaline cause his hands to shake, his heart continuing to act as a battering ram on the inside of his chest. The taste of bile lingers on his tongue, and he wills himself not to throw up again. With Izuku's continued silence, Jiwoo's brow furrows further. Izuku jumps a bit as he presses a surprisingly cool hand to the base of his ribs. Jiwoo locks eyes with him again, not moving his hand. "You need to calm your breathing, Tanjiro." "I don't," Izuku gasps out, words stolen by a wheeze. He doesn't know the breathing techniques, doesn't know how to fall into that rhythm to help his body. He's not a demon slayer, for fuck's sake. "I don't think this has to do with our breathing," Tanjiro tells him worriedly, his own shortness of breath staggering his words. "I think something happened when you sliced the demon. You hit that branch, remember?" "Oh, shit," Izuku groans quietly, knocking the side of his head against the tree. Jiwoo looks at him like he's seen a ghost. Zenitsu lets out such a large gasp Izuku reckons it must have taken his entire lung capacity, and Inosuke snorts out a slightly estranged laugh from behind him. Oh, shit, Izuku thinks, with more fervor this time. On the other side of their bond, Tanjiro dissolves into nervous giggles. Jiwoo-sen, Zenitsu wails, sobbing in earnest now and grabbing onto Jiwoo's shoulder. There's something wrong with him. He's been talking like that the whole day. He almost forgot his sword, and then forgot how to buckle his sword belt, and he was swearing the entire time. Jiwoo blinks at the frantic blonde before shaking off his hand, cupping Izuku's jaw and leaning his head forward for Jiwoo to inspect. No head wound? Zenitsu shakes his head frantically. He's just been weird. Izuku gently pulls out of Jiwoo's grip, resisting the urge to laugh over their antics. All he'd said was shit, after all, but he knows he can't keep this charade up any longer. I'm fine. Well, besides whatever's going on with my lungs. And to answer your earlier question, Jiwoo-sen, there's nothing wrong. I'm just not Tanjiro, that's all. He smiles what's been deemed his sunshine smile back in his time, trying to ignore the fact that Jiwoo's hand is now locked tight around the hilt of his katana. My name is Midoriya Izuku. It's nice to meet you. Tanjiro's hand flies to his head when Izuku screams, everything else around him going instantly dim, interview forgotten. What? He demands, panic clawing at his chest. What's happening? He barely registers that the female officer is speaking quickly, voice frantic, that Tsukachi is standing and then running, that Aizawa is staring at him. The only thing that matters is Izuku's answer, and when he gets it, his heart plummets. A demon. A demon that had based on the rushing in his head and swoop of his stomach, and Izuku's words snatched Izuku right off the ground. A creature that Izuku has no experience with whatsoever and has never encountered before. It doesn't make sense. At first it's very clearly daytime right now, unless their difference of times had suddenly been really messed up. But Izuku clears that up with one word, raining. It's cloudy, Tanjiro whispers aloud in horror, heart clenching, and Izuku is alone. He swears mentally then, ripping a hand through Izuku's curly hair, fingers snagging a little. Another hand grabs his, and he looks up out of his haze to see Aizawa standing in front of him. The room is empty besides the two of them now, and Tanjiro can't remember where Tsukachi went. What's wrong? Aizawa asks sharply. Does this have to do with Tahashi? Tanjiro's head is spinning, probably because of his own desperation and Izuku's current altitude. What? Whose? What do you mean it's cloudy? Aizawa continues, eyes flicking between Tanjiro's own. It's cloudy in my time right now, he responds faintly, little sparks of pain biting into his ankle and the phantom feeling of scrabbling fingers around his katana making his skin tingle. There's a demon. Tanjiro jumps as Aizawa's hands suddenly land on his shoulders, fingers tight, eyes glinting with a red hue in the light and refusing to let go of Tanjiro's gaze. Explain. They can come out when clouds cover the sun, and one did. Tanjiro's heart beats against his breastbone like it's trying to break through. It can fly. It grabbed Izuku. Aizawa releases him, letting loose a barrage of violent swears. Then Tanjiro's stomach promptly gives a horrible flip, and a victorious dreadful thrill runs through Izuku, because he'd used Tanjiro's sword to dismantle the demon except now he's in a freefall. Izuku's mind is running frantically and Tanjiro doesn't think he can breathe anymore and Aizawa is pacing in front of him. His mouth is moving but Tanjiro can't understand the words that come out of him. Izuku hits something then, pain like daggers stabbing through his side. Tanjiro gasps and doubles over in his chair. Trees are definitely his mortal nemesis at this point, but Izuku has a plan now. The only thing that Tanjiro can do is squeeze his eyes shut and pray. Adieu, Kamado, can you hear me? Aizawa is in front of him, hand cupping his jaw and tilting his head up. But Tanjiro barely hears him because Izuku made it. He made it. He's on the ground and safe and... Tanjiro lurches up from his seat and stumbles over to the trash can by Tsukachi's desk as nausea tears up his throat. He drops to a knee and loses his lunch as Izuku does. He sits there, panting, spitting out a mouthful of stomach acid, and knows that Izuku can't stop. It's okay, he reassures his Brumi. I know, Izu, I know. Izuku's stomach twists again as he realizes it's not dead. Of course it isn't, only decapitation can do that, but he definitely stunned it for a while. Which means he needs to run, and do it now. Tanjiro only learns to breathe correctly again when he does. Even though Izuku's fumbling steps send rivulets of pain up and down his leg and chest, Tanjiro snaps back into focus then so suddenly that his head spins, and he half thinks he's going to throw up again. Aizawa is kneeling next to him, one hand on his back and watching him with concern. "Tell me what's happening," he says, and it's not a question. "He's okay," Tanjiro whispers, sinking back onto the back of his legs. "A little injured, but okay. The others should catch up soon. They can finish it off." Aizawa lets out a slow breath, eyes closing for a few seconds. "Good, that's good." He pauses, studying Tanjiro's form again. "And you're sure this has nothing to do with Tahashi?" "I still don't know who that is," Tanjiro admits with an apologetic half-smile. "Tahashi is the man who put the quirk on you," Aizawa says simply, and now Tanjiro can recall that name in Tsukachi's mouth as he left. The sudden leaving itself makes a whole lot more sense as Aizawa continues, "He just escaped custody." The silence that follows his admission is thick enough that Izuku feels like he could drown in it, especially with his stupid lungs being the way that they are. Jiwoo's midnight gaze remains solid on his face, unmoving, and Izuku tries not to squirm under the weight of it. "Yeah, just pull out his soul, why don't you?" His hand has also not moved from its more concerning position around the hilt of his katana, but he doesn't draw it. Yet. "Your name," Jiwoo says slowly. "That's not your name, and even Inosuke knows it," Zenitsu wails. "Who are you and what have you done with Tanjiro?" Man, that's a perfect opportunity for some badass one-liner. If only Izuku is a badass and not just some wild teen who literally fell out of the sky like 5 minutes ago. And, of course, the obvious answer is that Izuku can very much not say some shit like "I killed him," because that would end up with him actually dead. Oh, shit, wait, would Izuku dying end up killing Tanjiro, too? They're so closely intertwined now that it wouldn't be surprising, necessarily, except actual injuries don't appear on the other, they just feel the pain. So, would the other end up brain dead, or something? That is something horrible to consider. "Are you trying to tell me something?" Jiwoo says, and Izuku nearly jumps out of skin because damn it, he'd been muttering. "Ah, fuck, I can't believe you've done this," Izuku whispers on impulse, resisting the urge to smack himself. Then he laughs at the others' expressions. They're simply so flabbergasted and lost that he can't just not. Inosuke growls, actually growls from his left, fingers poking at Izuku's forehead as he peers down at him. "That demon must have fucked you up, man." "It's most likely a spell," Jiwoo says decisively, tilting his head slightly as he stares at Izuku. He's been doing that for the past 5 minutes, actually, and it's more than a little disarming. Something that got into his head and messed around. "Okay, can you stop talking about me like I'm not here?" Izuku huffs, crossing his arms over his chest, which gives a painful reminder that he'd smacked into a tree. "Fuck trees, honestly." "Same," Tanjiro mutters. "Also, when you're done doing whatever it is you're doing, I have to talk to you about something." Izuku gives a mental thumbs up and continues, deciding to run with it. "And bingo, my dude, it is a spell. But it grabbed me and Tanjiro and switched us, so I'm in his head and he's in mine." "My dude?" Jiwoo repeats, looking as baffled as his deadpan expression permits. "Never mind. The butterfly mansion isn't too far. This is more of Shinobu's element." He stands, his split haori sweeping past Izuku's face. Then he starts to walk away. Izuku, now the one who's baffled how the turntables, stares after him. Does he expect Izuku to follow him? Like, right now? Immediately? Apparently so, because Inosuke grabs one of his arms and hauls him up, saying, "All right, not Makairo. It's Midoriya, actually." "Minorita." "No." "All right, Minorita," Inosuke continues cheerfully, actively dragging him after Jiwoo. "We're gonna fix your head, let's fucking go." After Izuku lets Jiwoo bandage his leg and wrap his ribs, it takes nearly an entire day of walking to get there, in which Tanjiro informs Izuku that the police had officially lost their grip on the guy that had stuck them together in the first place, so they and Aizawa-sensei were scrambling to follow his trail. He'd told Tanjiro to sit his ass down and stay back, which is very Aizawa-sensei of him. According to Tanjiro, he had not been happy to learn that Tanjiro is a full-fledged demon slayer at 15 and had called him problem child at least 3 times. Izuku isn't concerned. That's how you know Aizawa-sensei secretly actually likes you. Once they do, Izuku gapes at the sprawling building. He heard the word mansion, yes, but holy shit, it's huge. There's even a few buildings that don't connect with the main one that could be houses all by themselves. How does one person live here, he says, watching multiple wind chimes clink against each other on the massive porch. Inosuke snorts, boar mask twitching at the action. Not just one person, dumbass. We practically lived here for a couple months, don't you remember? Zenitsu begs, his eyes getting suspiciously glossy again. He'd cried for most of the journey here. Yeah, Izuku gets it, but Zenitsu is a loud crier. Of fucking course he doesn't, dumbass. His head's messed up. Inosuke snarls back almost immediately. Jiwoo comes to their rescue, using a gentle hand to nudge Izuku forward by the shoulder. The Butterfly Mansion acts as the Demon Slayer Core Hospital, he explains in that emotionless way of his. Its head is Shinobu, the Butterfly Hashira, because she is adept in medicine as well as poison. She also trains young slayers here that seek to follow a path similar to hers. Girls, Zenitsu clarifies, pulling a 180 with a happy sigh. Inosuke smacks him. Who we are nice to, he finishes with a yelp. Izuku decides not to delve any further into that, letting Jiwoo guide him into the mansion. It's a veritable maze, matching sliding doors down each hallway. The scent definitely one of a hospital. Cleaners, antiseptics, though with a fresh floral scent weaving through it all. They meet with a girl probably around Izuku's age who emerges from one of the rooms, her black hair pulled into pigtails and blue eyes softening when she sees them. She shifts her tray to her hip, a small smile on her lips. Hello, Tomioka-san, she greets. Tanjiro, Inosuke. She just glares at Zenitsu, her face severe for a second before loosening again. What can I do for you? Is Shinobu in? Jiwoo asks. We would like to speak with her. Tanjiro's head got fucked. Aoi, Inosuke pipes up, his tone suspiciously less brash than normal, though his words still make Izuku wince. The girl, Aoi, looks over at Izuku in concern. He gives her half-wave back, displaying that he's pretty much fine, thank you. Sorry to hear that. Yes, Shinobu-sensei is in. I can show you to her. With Aoi's guidance, they move farther into the mansion, and then out of it, stepping out into easily the biggest garden Izuku has ever seen. The smell of pollen is thick in the air, and the gravel of the path through it crunches under his feet. Aoi leads them to a greenhouse in the back where the foliage is even thicker than in the gardens. Bright colors are everywhere, flowers and ferns and vines that grab onto Izuku's Haori as he passes. Remembering Jiwoo's earlier words, adept in medicine as well as poison, he carefully shies away from the various plants that are probably definitely poisonous. Aoi calls out to the woman leaning over a deceptively purple flower, gloved hands working somewhere among the roots, and she turns. Izuku's first thought is that she's tiny, because even from here he can tell that much. Her Haori is patterned on the inside and along the hem like a butterfly's wing, and she has a large ornate butterfly pin keeping her hair out of her face. Her eyes are large and just as purple as the flower, and something about them sends an involuntary shiver down the back of Izuku's neck. The butterfly lady Butterfly Hashira, his bad weight what the hell is a butterfly Hashira stares him directly in the eyes and smiles in a slow, vaguely terrifying way. Izuku stares back. Oh, two can play this game, lady. He grins right back at her, making sure it's with too many teeth. She smiles wider, her purple eyes dancing, and Izuku thinks he's been approved of in some way. My, she says, a bit of a purr in her tone. Who do we have here? Midoriya Izuku, ma'am? Izuku introduces himself with a bop of his head. Shinobu hums a little under her breath. Her voice still has that musical quality to it, but he can hear the threat underneath. Is there a reason you look exactly like a certain Kamado Tanjiro, Midoriya? Shinobu-sama, Zenitsu cries immediately, one hand fisting in the shoulder of Izuku's Haori. A D-demon did something to him, and we don't know how to stop it. He keeps saying he drops his voice comically then. Midoriya Izuku, not Tanjiro. Again, I can hear you, Izuku grumbles, sticking out his tongue at Zenitsu. Perhaps it's a sort of spell. Jiwoo takes charge of the rapidly spiraling situation. The kid confirmed that it was, though I don't know how trustworthy his word is. I am afraid, Tomioka-kun, Shinobu says lightly, though her eyes have never changed from their steely look. That my expertise lies in medicine, not the arcane. Why didn't you take him to master? Juwu steadfastly doesn't look at Izuku as he replies, it may lie in medicine also, which is why I brought him to you first. Oh, shit, Izuku whispers to Tanjiro. They think you might be crazy. Thank you so much for that, Tanjiro mumbles back. Well, how do you know you're not? Izuku teases, smirking. You're pretty crazy to me, says the one who likes to eat cardboard. Izuku holds a hand to his chest in mock betrayal. Oh, how you wound me. And I don't eat it. I have licked it. Once, obviously. Tanjiro rolls his eyes, though he's smiling. Same thing. Bastard. Izuku blinks as something not in his head tries to get his attention, looking back up at Shinobu. She does that not quite smile again that doesn't fit with the rest of her face, man. Who knew butterflies could be creepy? How long have you been with Tanjiro? Midoriya, she asks, hands clasped placidly in front of her. This feels like a trick question, and Izuku squints at Shinobu suspiciously. It'd probably make this worse if he's honest about that. But how likely is it that she'd believe Izuku came about just today? The demon you fought was too weak to have an art to itself, and Juwu knows that. Tanjiro advises quickly. Go with the one in the cave that injured me almost a week ago. Since the cave, Izuku says decidedly. No turning back now, he supposes. Tanjiro says the demon did something weird. Zenitsu gasps loudly, hands coming up to smack his face. Oh, I knew it. You've been acting weird ever since that cave demon. That guy was a bitch, Inosuke mutters, swinging his chipped sword around absent-mindedly, as if remembering the strikes he did in that fight. Shinobu eyes him, but doesn't move away. Okay, Shinobu says. So you've been in control since the cave fight, Midoriya? In control, Izuku thinks, brow furrowing. He watches Shinobu, her laced hands and her soft expression, and realizes that she thinks she already knows what's going on. She's already come to her own conclusions. One where Izuku has apparently been in control of Tanjiro's body, but where would that leave Tanjiro? Just in his head. Ooh. Never mind about the crazy, Izuku retracts his earlier words to Tanjiro. She just thinks we have did. What's that? Tanjiro asks. Dissociative identity disorder, Izuku tells him. A psychiatric disease where a person develops two or more distinct personalities as a trauma response. Huh, Tanjiro says, surprised. I hadn't heard of that before. That's actually really interesting. I don't think we should run with it, though. Our situation might be similar, but I don't want to saddle you with something you don't actually have, you know? Plus, I'm not going to be here forever. Tanjiro sighs. True. Just sick with the spell, then. You seem unfocused, Midoriya-kun, Shinobu says, tapping one finger on her lips. Is there anything wrong? Izuku exhales slowly, gaining a new grip on his plan. No, apologies, ma'am. The demon's spell threw Tanjiro and I's heads together, so it can get kind of loud. Shinobu says with a flutter of her eyelashes, still looking a little disbelieving. My, Tomioka-kun, you've got quite the situation on your hands. Juwu only blinks at this, face studiously blank. Well, whatever it is, one thing is clear, Midoriya-kun is not a demon slayer. It would be disastrous to let him out into the field at this time. Do you agree, Midoriya-kun? It sounds like a veiled threat, almost, and Izuku feels gratified in the knowledge that he's found someone shorter than him who's definitely kinda scary besides his mom. Of course, maybe that's just how the scale goes. The shorter, the less room there is to keep the violence hidden. Izuku certainly feels that way some days. Yes, Shinobu-kun, he assents, a small smile playing on his lips at the address. She quirks an eyebrow at him, looking amused at the challenge. Oh, no, Tanjiro whispers, feeling the horror of introducing an unstoppable force to an unmovable object. Izuku cackles back, just a little. It's good for the soul, after all. You'll be confined to the butterfly mansion until we figure this out, I think, Shinobu says thoughtfully. Perhaps I will send for Master's advice. I hope you enjoy your stay here, Midoriya-kun. She winks at him, and Izuku grins back with a mouth full of teeth. He can feel the chaos energy already. What have I done? Tanjiro laments, and Izuku happily laughs in the face of his sorrow. Naho, Kyo, and Sumi introductions courtesy of his Brumi are the second cutest little girls Izuku's ever met in his life, the first being Eri, of course. They spill into the greenhouse one on top of the other after Shinobu leaves, pulling Juu along with her, and race right towards him. Tanjiro, Kiyo yells excitedly, wrapping herself around one of Izuku's legs. Hi. Kiyo, stop that, Sumi chastises from behind her. Tanjiro's hurt. Tanjiro, let me see your head. Naho just simply throws herself at him, a big mischievous grin on her face, and Izuku quickly snatches her out of the air before she can hurt herself. She giggles happily, and Izuku smiles right back. Obviously, he pretends there isn't a child attached to his leg and starts to head into the gardens, wondering aloud why his legs seem to be impeded by an extra dose of gravity. Kiyo screeches with laughter at his antics, and Sumi bounces along beside him, having dropped her duties in exchange for a smile. Soon, he's sitting on the porch of the house with 3 little girls strewn across his lap, listening intently as he explains their predicament and where he comes from. That's so weird, Naho exclaims, clearly enthralled by the idea. What do you do if you're not a demon slayer? I go to school, Izuku replies, playfully poking at one of the green butterfly clips in her hair. It's so big that I got lost every day for 2 weeks. Do you have friends there? Sumi asks, just a hair more politely than her adopted sisters, though her black eyes are bright and intrigued. Izuku nods eagerly, feeling his own face light up. Heroes and quirks are the only things he likes talking about more than his friends. Yeah, I have 19 classmates, and they're all awesome. Uraraka is super nice, but also super scary sometimes. I've been friends with Bakugo since we were kids, and he's also kind of scary, but he's secretly a really big softie. Like Inosuke, Kiyo pipes up, laughing, and Izuku grins back. I am not a fucking softie, Inosuke yells from the garden. His argument is completely undermined by the fact that he's letting Aoi and Zenitsu put flowers on his boar head. Exactly, Izuku whispers conspiratorially, and the 3 girls dissolve into laughter once again. That evening, Izuku is wishing he's back at UA because at least he's now familiar with its consistent floor plan. This mansion, not so much. He swears he's been wandering around for at least an hour and he hasn't found anything that looks familiar. In fact, he would say he's pretty sure he's been down this hallway at least 3 times, but all of the hallways are identical, so he really has no idea. He's about ready to flop in one of the patient rooms until someone finds him, but turns the next corner and is already found. Unfortunately, it's by someone he's never seen before in his life. The guy stalks toward him, face set in a permanent glower. The scars he bears allow him to look even scarier without much extra effort, cutting across his features and his open tunic exposing large, jagged ones on his chest. He barely even looks at Izuku, which is fine with him. The guy has a kind of "I'll murder you and laugh about it" vibe. Except, as soon as they pass each other in the hall, the guy mutters "brat" and bumps shoulders with Izuku definitely on purpose, making him stumble because this guy may be short, but wow, is he built like a brick wall. Fuck you too, I guess, Izuku mumbles back, half on reflex and half because what is his problem? Did Tanjiro personally disparage his grandmother or something? Not that Tanjiro would ever even consider doing anything like that, of course. He's too nice. Izuku immediately has to recalculate his decision when the man spins around, scarred face twisted into a scowl and posture aggressive. What did you just say to me? He then remembers that Tanjiro would rather eat his Haori than say fuck, and right now he is, in fact, Tanjiro. He's been here all of a few hours and he's already antagonized, like 3 people by accident. Great going, Izuku. Ducks are cool, Izuku replies with a sage nod. Damage control completed effortlessly, obviously. One of the guy's eyes twitches, and Izuku likens it to the impending doom of smelling burnt sugar in the air. Oh, hey, wow, he has a sword, too. It's an incredible deduction since said sword is now under his chin. Izuku, what did you do? Tanjiro demands, in the way that an exasperated parent would ask a toddler, what's in your mouth? This guy's mad at me, Izuku says, only slightly sheepish. I may or may not have sworn at him. Izuku. He started it. He called me you? A brat with unprecedented reason. I stand by my rights. Tanjiro starts to roll his eyes, but then freezes. Wait. Does he have silver hair and scars and his face and chest? Mayhaps? Tanjiro pinches the bridge of his nose and sighs in a very Aizawa sensei way. Izuku should have never let them meet each other. That, he says long-sufferingly, is Shinazugawa. He is the Wind Hashira. Ooh, Izuku whispers. Oops. Yeah, kid, fucking oops. The guy who is apparently an elite demon slayer says. The jade green metal of his katana is cool underneath Izuku's chin, and demon slayers don't really kill each other, right? He feels like that goes pretty much directly against their cause. So, Izuku says as casually as he can, you're definitely a Hashira and I'm stupid. Nice to me, wait, I've met you. Right? He's doing so amazing. 10/10 here. You're impossible, Tanjiro deadpans. The katana is lowered abruptly, and Shinazugawa narrows his eyes at him. The fuck is wrong with you? Izuku blinks back, innocent to the end. Is that a yes or no? It's a what the fuck is wrong with you? Shinazugawa clarifies helpfully, glowering. Where's Shinobu? You definitely got royally fucked over somehow. Did you at least beat the shit out of the demon? Sure, Izuku offers. Anyway, I'm apologizing. You're officially unfucked, wait. No, anyways, I'll just go. Shinazugawa is staring at him with something akin to awe, shoving his katana roughly back into his sheath. Wow, he says simply, and he looks like he means it. I don't know if I should laugh or smack you back into your senses. Izuku laughs nervously, thinking that maybe he should just offer himself up at this point. Clearly his life is a cosmic joke. This is a hell of a first interaction, he says with a weak smile. I feel like I should introduce myself. Should I introduce myself? We've met, dumbass, Shinazugawa rolls his eyes. Deciding whether or not to kill you and that demon sister of yours bring back any memories. Izuku freezes, mouth going dry. You were going to kill Tanjiro and Nezuko. A pulse of anger, actual anger from Tanjiro bleeds through their bond, and his Brumi's memories flash by him. Thick ropes cutting into his wrists and his head pressed into gravel by a heavy hand. Hashira's flanking him, as the man before Izuku now shoves that same green blade through Nezuko's box. Blood stains through the wood and Tanjiro yells, jerking against the hold. The memory blurs, and it's Tanjiro trapped again. A fist in his hair as Shinazugawa places a foot on the now horizontal box and flips the door open. Bloody katana poised over the opening. I pity him for even being born. A deep voice says off to Tanjiro's left, obviously talking about him. Oh, Izuku says again, for an entirely different reason. Got it. He then punches Shinazugawa in the face. The Wind Hashira stumbles back, spluttering, but lunges forward in half a second. Izuku was expecting that, of course, and ducks to the side. I take it back, he yells. Get wholly fucked. Brat, Shinazugawa roars back, going for his sword. But joke's on him, Izuku literally lives and breathes close combat while he knows from personal experience that demon slayers suck at the ability to simply throw hands. So he moves before Shinazugawa can unsheath his sword, employing a method he's only used a handful of times in sparring matches with Satu Operation. Yeet. He braces his legs and goes for the Hashira's center of gravity, locking his arms around his middle and jumping to get some momentum as he turns and throws the man to the floor. Shinazugawa wheezes as the breath is knocked out of him, face flashing with pure surprise. Arms still pushing into his diaphragm, Izuku glares down at him. Don't ever, he growls, touch either of them again. Shinazugawa stares back at him and begins to laugh. It's a raspy and kind of crazy sounding, and Izuku realizes what had bothered him about the man in the beginning. His emotional scent is inconsistent and sharp, broken pieces slicing through each other like the rough scars on his chest. Grief, grief, grief overtaking it all. Yeah, Tanjiro murmurs, he's just, well, all the Hashira are messed up to some degree, and Shinazugawa. You've got guts, kid, Shinazugawa cuts in, not that he knows it. He tosses Izuku off him, and Izuku lets himself be mildly tossed, pulling away from him as the Hashira sits up against the wall. Reminds me of someone I used to know. There's a small smirk on his face, a certain cold emptiness in his eyes, and the face of Dabai flashes in Izuku's head, the same expression pulling at the scars that make up half his face. Me, too, Izuku says, swallowing. I'm glad you're not him, though. Shinazugawa regards him. The brat I know wouldn't nearly throw me through the floor. Then maybe you don't know him well enough, Izuku shoots back. He's better than the lot of you combined. Shinazugawa just blinks at him and says, I know. Izuku feels surprised jolt through his gut, but the man continues before he can say anything. And drop the ruse already, kid. You're clearly not Kamado, even if you look freakishly like him. Izuku smiles sheepishly. Yeah, I'm not. I'm Midoriya. Shinazugawa gathers himself, pulling himself back onto his feet. Fucking terrible to meet you, Midoriya. Next time I run into your face, I'll show you what it is to be Hashira. He starts down the hall, but pauses and says after a second, tell the Kamado brat to hurry up and kill Muzan, or I'll beat his ass to it. And then he's gone, turning the corner and disappearing into the recesses of the mansion that Izuku is still currently lost in. That was the strangest interaction I've ever borne witness to, Tanjiro announces. Clearly, you've never beaten the shit out of someone to solve problems, and it shows, Izuku laughs. That would only cause more problems. Nope. The opposite, actually. How do you think Kaken and I got over our history? Izuku has the distinct impression of Tanjiro burying his head in his hands. Kami, help me with these idiots. Izuku squawks indignantly. Hey, this idiot just got you on better terms with a Hashira. You're welcome. Why are you like this? Are you ready? Izuku whispers to the trio of girls. They nod eagerly and bounce, Sumi shushing Kiyo when she squeaks excitedly. Izuku grins back, going on his tiptoes to balance the gourd of water just right on the door. Sumi steps up, clearly trying to wrestle down her glee and calls, Shinobu-sama, can you come out here for a second? There's a muffled clink from the office, and Izuku shoos Kiyo and Naho back around the corner. They peek out with him, and Izuku sends Sumi a supportive thumbs up. Footsteps move toward the door, and Naho grabs onto Izuku's Haori, nearly pushing him out into the open. The door moves just slightly at first, then slides fully open. Izuku sees one glimpse of Shinobu looking at Sumi expectantly before the gourd tips. Shinobu moves away too quickly for Izuku to see, right into their other trap. Shinobu lets out a surprised cry as the second gourd of water empties, its contents right on her head. Next thing they know, the four of them are getting glared straight into the grave by a soaked 5'0" Hashira. Oh, shit, Izuku whispers, still grinning. He sweeps Kiyo and Naho up into his arms and snags Sumi along the way, chanting, Go, 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 go. The girls shriek with laughter as Izuku scampers away from the crime scene. He glances over his shoulder once, catching Shinbu's dancing eyes in his peripherals. The look sends a chill down his spine. I'm so dead. Apologies in advance, Tan. Tanjiro just sighs resignedly, which makes Izuku laugh so hard he nearly drops a child. There's something buzzing in Tanjiro's pocket. It vibrates against his skin, a muffled tune doing its best to escape the confines of his shorts. When he pulls it out, he finds a rectangular sort of box thing. He's seen these around, he realizes as he flips it in his hand. Izuku's classmates are often holding them or showing each other things on them. Currently, the front is lit up as the tune continues to play from nowhere, displaying a picture of a bright red shoe, sandal. Tanjiro stares at it for a second, before hesitantly poking at the screen. He jumps nearly out of his skin as tinny voices start up. There are voices coming from the box. Tanjiro pokes it confusedly, leaning closer to try and hear what they're saying. He picks it up after a futile second of this and holds it closer to his ear instead. He startles again as Kirishima's voice pops out, asking, Hey, man, you there? In the background, something explodes. Tanjiro pulls the box back in front of his face to stare at the dim screen, and then hesitantly puts it to his ear again. Kirishima, he says incredulously. Oh, there you are, Izuku's classmate answers, like his disembodied voice coming from a metal box is a perfectly normal happenstance. Is this still Tanjiro? I'm pretty sure it is. Yes, Tanjiro stutters out. Kirishima, where exactly are you? HM? Oh, I'm still in the dorms. Anyway, I need you to settle a discussion for us. His voice goes distant near the end of his sentence, and Bakugo yells something over him. Discussion might not be the right term for this, Kirishima corrects himself with a chuckle. Tanjiro is so confused. So Bakugo here thinks that All Might's Silver Age fighting style was loads better than the Golden Age, to which I of course answered, no it's fucking not. And then he caught the couch on fire. Briefly. Okay, Tanjiro answers slowly. He has no idea what Kirishima just said besides All Might, but he tries anyway. Doesn't the term golden age imply that it's better? Exactly, Kirishima screeches from the box. See, Mr. Fanboy? Other people have common sense. The background noise consists mostly of explosions now, and Tanjiro can imagine the thick sweetness that must lie in the air as he fights down a smile. Bakugo yells, "Fuck you. You think you know more about All Might than me? And you're asking the fucking time traveler for help? Your head is shoved so far up your ass you ate your own damn brain, you ignorant slut." That's his version of a compliment. Don't worry, Kirishima assures him. No, it's fucking not. Tanjiro grins and opens his mouth to reply, but his attention is stolen when the door creaks open. He freezes, fingers locking around the box. His chair screeches as he pushes it back, but he pays it no mind. The man stares at him from the doorway, and Tanjiro's eyes flick over him, checking off features one by one. A mess of salt and pepper hair, horizontally slitted pupils in unsettling yellow eyes, horns curling away from his forehead, points lying by his eyes. His face is sketched into Izuku's memory, a hand with a grip like iron around his arm. Oh, hell, Izuku groans. It's him. Tahashi. The one who connected Tanjiro and Izuku in the first place. Tanjiro has the insane urge to thank him, before he remembers that this is a potentially violent man who is now a criminal because of unlawful quirk use. And he's actually supposed to be an escapee right now. He clearly is not, since he's very much still in the building and staring at Tanjiro with an unsettling blankness in his eyes. Kirishima, he says quietly into the box, not taking his eyes off Tahashi. I need you to tell Aizawa that Tahashi is here. Okay. Wait, you're at that police thing. Okay, yeah, on it. A consecutive series of beeps echoes around the room, and Izuku's box goes dark a second later. Hi, Tanjiro decides to start polite. Chances are Tahashi doesn't remember Izuku and Tanjiro can somehow get an officer in here to detain him again. Baby hero, Tahashi says with a sure nod, because obviously that's a perfectly normal and sane response. It's unfortunately clear that he does, in fact, remember Izuku? Tanjiro looks to the hallway behind the man, still empty. Nice to see you again, too. He keeps his voice upbeat and pleasant. Tahashi's mouth curls into a grin and he throws himself forward. Tanjiro, in turn, skids to the side. Tahashi fumbles right past him, nearly smacking into the wall before he catches himself. He turns, letting out a guttural snarl, and then he freezes, head twitching a bit to the side. The sudden movement makes Tanjiro tense, but the man doesn't make any other moves. Then, a second later, he locks his gaze onto Tanjiro again. A light shiver rolls down Tanjiro's spine as the look in his eyes changes, suddenly becoming more sure, more stable. He looks at Tanjiro like he actually sees him there, his expression now smooth and professional instead of lightly insane. Oh, hello, he says placidly, and even his voice has changed. You are not the one I expected. You are the one from outside this world, aren't you? Tanjiro stares at him, instinctively sliding back a little. He knows. Tahashi knows he isn't Izuku, but he's acting differently and exchanging his nonsensical words for polite ones. Distantly, he remembers Izuku's explanation of DID, a psychiatric disease where a person develops two or more distinct personalities as a trauma response. Is this what this is? Had Tahashi just switched in front of him into someone else? Izuku jolts in his head. Oh my god. I completely forgot DID is in his file. It probably is one of his alters. Tanjiro starts, head still spinning a bit before he takes a deep breath. Yes, I am. And you are? Not Tahashi just smiles, a tight-lipped expression that's just this side of unnatural. I watched you, Hide says, their tone moving towards something almost wistful despite the creepy words. I sat with you. I was you. Sometimes. I was there when you lost everything, and I was there when you found it all again. All right, Tanjiro says as evenly as he can. He's not quite sure what that means, honestly. Maybe something to do with his quirk? Fuck, yes, it does, Izuku says, moving on to speak in the rapid-fire way that only Tanjiro can understand at this point. Hindsight. He can see into the past through the eyes of the people that were there. I guess you kind of count as a historical figure weird. I cannot remember my name, but I know yours. They're still doing that weird smile, a sort of excited light now in their eyes. It makes them look all the more normal despite the horn, of course. Kamado Tanjiro. The boy who made way for the end of the Age of Demons. They never could have done it without you, you know. You see, I have watched. There's a buzzing in Tanjiro's blood, and his heart has begun to pound in his chest. Part of him knows this guy is crazy, knows that they can't be trusted. But the light in their eyes and their words stir something in Tanjiro, a whisper that there is always some truth in the ramblings of a madman. And he finds himself watching Not Tahashi right back. My brother did not know, Not Tahashi continues. He is different from me. He does not like to watch how we have gotten here, just where we are. He thinks he knows what is best, but he doesn't learn from what we have been through. He is not a fan of heroes, and that I do understand, because I have watched the real ones and understood them. I have understood things that the modern hero today could not fathom. He pins Tanjiro with his golden yellow gaze. Do you understand, Kamado Tanjiro? Do you understand what it will take? Tanjiro has to take a second to piece together what Not Tahashi's spiral of words mean, and finds he doesn't know what to say when he does. I think so, he whispers after a beat, and it doesn't feel like enough. It'll take everything, won't it? You have suffered loss, Not Tahashi says softly in reply, and Tanjiro feels his heart squeeze. You will suffer more before it is over. Midoriya Izuku will as well. Both of your paths lead into darkness. Your soul often finds itself in such places. It's where it can shine the brightest. Tanjiro blinks at that, brow furrowing as he considers the word choice, soul, singular. Our soul, not his and mine? Why, of course, Not Tahashi sounds amused, their smile looking a little more real now. You must have figured it out already, haven't you? The drug doesn't let us connect just anyone. That would be remarkably impossible, I think. Holy shit, Izuku murmurs. Your soul, it's almost identical to Ninth's. It's practically the same, really. Tanjiro can't help the weak breath of laughter that escapes him. First has been right this entire time, and he didn't even know it. He and Izuku are joined by more than this quirk, and it wasn't a coincidence. Guess you really are stuck with me, Izuku jokes, though his chest feels like it's about to burst. Guess so, Tanjiro replies softly, and he can't keep the smile off his face. This pleases you, Not Tahashi notes. Others find the confirmation of reincarnation unsettling at times. But there are many souls in this world that are old just as many as there are new. The world likes to keep itself in balance, don't you think? Of course. Tanjiro says, still smiling and probably looking like an idiot. He can't bring himself to care. Izuku is his descendant, in a sense, and the realization settles something into place inside him. Once it does, it's like it was always there, like his soul has always known, even if his mind didn't. He supposes that makes sense, though he can't say he understands souls any better now. That's the nature of souls. They aren't there to be understood, only loved. Tanjiro can work with that. He was made to love, after all. I can separate you if you wish, Not Tahashi says, tilting their head slightly. My brother had no intention to, I think, but I do not see the point in this. Time isn't linear, but it balks at being folded like this. There must be balance in all things. The offer makes Tanjiro go still, because oh, Izuku echoes. It's then that Aizawa finally crashes through the door, lunging for Not Tahashi immediately with Tsukachi and a few officers on his heels. Tanjiro feels like he blinks and Aizawa's capture weapon is wrapped around the man and Aizawa is pinning him against one of the walls. Wait, he blurts, throwing a hand out as he scrambles towards Izuku's sensei. He's okay, he was going to help. Aizawa looks over at him, eyes glowing a threatening red. Tsukachi also pauses, an odd-looking pair of handcuffs dangling from one hand. Help how? Aizawa growls, glaring at Not Tahashi. The quirk, Tanjiro explains, taking another step towards Not Tahashi. Tahashi switched into them. They said they'd take the quirk off even if Tahashi didn't want to. It's our only chance. His throat tightens at the statement, and Izuku mentally shies away slightly, because it's true. Neither of them were expecting it, but neither of them can help it, either. They've got no leads other than this. Not Tahashi literally said that Tahashi has no intention of ever taking the quirk off of them. And as much as Tanjiro wants to, they can't live like this. They're separate people, and based on the quirk's history, if they stay under its influence any longer they might not be anymore. There's another chance, at least. One that won't leave Izuku and Tanjiro stranded from each other. but they can't prove that with the quirk. Aizawa looks and not Tahashi, face severe enough to turn them to stone. They just nod, and maybe Aizawa notices the differences between not Tahashi and Tahashi, too, because he slowly backs off. He doesn't remove the capture weapon, not entirely, but he unwinds it enough for not Tahashi to get their hands free. They look at Tanjiro, eyes a honey yellow as they ask, "Are you ready?" Tanjiro's throat feels too tight to speak, and he's sure it's from both him and Izuku combined. Can we say goodbye?" he forces out quietly, ignoring the way his voice hitches. Not Tahashi doesn't smile, but Tanjiro thinks he detects a sort of softening in the wrinkles by his eyes. Of course. Tanjiro turns away to face a wall, and he thinks this is the first time their shared mind has been completely silent when they're both conscious. After a few seconds, Izuku begins wrestling with his brain, words sifting around and finding no purchase. Tanjiro feels himself release a breath, arms coming up to wrap lightly around his chest, and he finds a strange sort of peace floating around there. He knew it was coming, they both did. And while Tanjiro doesn't want to let go of Izuku, he knows he'll be able to. I guess this is it, he decides to start. In another world, Izuku curls his fingers into Tanjiro's Haori as wind chimes tinkle around him. He tucks his knees in close with his chest as tightly as he can, like the pressure will take away some of the ache. "Yeah," he whispers back. "I guess so." "You're going to make it," Tanjiro tells him suddenly, a gentle ferocity in his voice. "I thought I should say it because you will, even if you don't quite believe it yet. You're going to make it wherever you want to be, and you'll be amazing. I know it." All Izuku can do is duck his head as the dam breaks, tears tracking down his cheeks. Izuku can feel his belief like it's his own, unwavering, and without a single insinuation of doubt. It soothes cracks Izuku didn't even know he had, and he thinks maybe he could believe it, too. "You too," he says, thankful he doesn't have to use his real voice because he's pretty sure all that would come out is a mess. "You're going to find that bastard and avenge every life he's ended. But it's not going to be your end, got it? I know it feels like this is the only way you can keep going, but it's not. It's not, Tan. You're going to defeat him, but after that, you're going to live." There's a wavering feeling somewhere deep inside Tanjiro, a slippery weight he knows he's been holding for a long time. He's the oldest, so he's used to it. He's the only one left who can, so it's his responsibility to make up for the one time he wasn't there with everything he has. He knows he's not alone in that, knows that there's others who hold burdens just the same. And if he could take them from all of them, take everything from his sister and pile it on his own shoulders, he would in a heartbeat if it meant they could be happy. "No matter where you go, what you do, what happens next, more than anything, I want you to be happy," Izuku tells him, and Tanjiro knows he's just the same. "No one deserves it more than you. Remember that, okay? Or else I will rip apart space-time just to beat your ass into the next century." Of course, Tanjiro nods sagely like he isn't crying. "Right back at you, Lord Bonebreaker." "The term you're looking for is Uno reverse," Izuku supplies. "Also, it would be amazing if you could pretend this never happened, and we never switched. Like just straight up gaslight Inosuke. I would kill to see that." Tanjiro lets out a surprised laugh, albeit a little choked. He might even fall for it, too. "That's exactly what I'm saying." They lapse back into silence, and Tanjiro is suddenly full of all the things he wants to say, even though he can't actually make sense of what those words are. They float out of reach, more feeling than syllables, and all he can make out in the end is how much he loves Izuku and the way the boy himself loves. So he says it. "You're the strongest person I know," Izuku says, voice like a physical ache, "and I love you, too, and I'm going to miss you. So much." "Me, too?" Tanjiro nudges him mentally. "But maybe not for long, Your quirk is pretty fantastical." Izuku feels a smile blossom across his face, and something warm settles into place between them. It feels like an end, but a right one. And they might be getting separated, but they're not losing each other. Izuku doesn't think he could manage that even if he tried. "See you on the other side?" Tanjiro asks, and Izuku wishes he could hug him, could hold his hand just once before letting go. He does what he can, though, and squishes their minds together as close as he can, one last time. "You don't even need to ask," he replies. When Izuku blinks next, there's a plain wall in front of him and tiles on the floor. He fumbles a bit as he turns, seeing a handcuffed Tahashi and his sensei. The silence in his head is so fucking loud, like someone reached in and plucked his thought stream right out. There's no phantom breeze on his face, no bundled emotions tucked next to his, no weight on his ears and hip. It's possibly the weirdest thing Izuku has ever experienced, and he finds that all he can do is fall into a crouch and breathe. Aizawa-sensei is by his side in a second, and Izuku grabs his hand without thinking. Aizawa-sensei just squeezes his fingers gently and stays, and that's all Izuku could have wanted. When Tanjiro blinks next, he's huddled in green and black once again, earring brushing his shoulders. His nose is working properly again, the sense of the greenery weaving around him and the wind carrying the smell of a summer night. The wind chimes are still singing, and Tanjiro tilts his head back to watch the shining tubes clink together. There's an emptiness in his head, a feeling like someone knocked the breath out of him and something else came loose along the way. So he leans back against the wall of the mansions and waits as the colors of sunset begin to bleed through the air. Inosuke rounds the corner a few minutes later and stops, pulling up his boar head to squint at him. "That you, Mini Og? Fuck, Midia? Where the hell did you go?" Tanjiro tilts his head towards his friend, heart panging just a little. "That's the worst I've heard you mess up my name thus far, Inosuke." Inosuke actually drops the boar head. "Shit, Tanjiro," he bolts over, laughing maniacally and giving him a hearty slap on the shoulder. "Thought we might have lost you. Where'd the other bastard go? Midia?" Tanjiro smiles innocently at him and says, "Who?" When Izuku falls into bed that night, it feels like it takes forever, but also seconds to fall asleep at the same time. He remembers being buzzed with excitement, unable to stay in one position for too long, a delicate hope in his chest as he smooshed his face against his pillow. And then next thing he knows, he's out, and he's looking into the familiar void. As he watches, the mist begins to coalesce in front of him, swirling and solidifying into the broken-off concrete housing the vestiges' thrones. Izuku is standing in the center, staring out into purple-blue-black until it's yellow, and Shimura Nana is floating amongst the nothingness. It's strange how real she looks. How solid. Izuku stares at her for a good 5 seconds, letting his brain compute that he's looking at a dead person who is living as a ghost inside his quirk factor with 7 other people. Shimura just smiles at him, a wide grin that promises mischief. She lands on the edge of the space, boots thumping against the ground, and says, "Hiya, kid, like this meeting is the most normal thing ever and not in a weird, theoretically constructed plane of existence." "Hey," Izuku echoes, and his hands fly to his mouth. Shimura's grin widens, and she punches him gently on the shoulder, which he can see. He glances down at himself and the clothes he slept in. A shirt that says pajamas and basketball shorts. "Holy shit." "Right?" Shimura says, bouncing happily. It sends her at least 3 feet into the air each time. "We've been waiting ages, kiddo. Ages." Izuku doesn't want to look, the little ember of hope feeling awfully fragile by his heart. But Shimura looks so excited, and Izuku thinks he might be shaking, and he can't stop himself. Slowly, the other vestiges blur into existence. 6th is first, red coat hiding almost half his face as he introduces himself. 5th and 4th follow shortly after, bickering cheerfully with each other. Izuku is too stunned to say anything, just staring at his predecessors as they go about their quirk-haunting business. He catches sight of some blurs on the far edge of the landmass, makes out some orange and green and maybe a flash of red. When he turns to inquire about it, he skitters to the side in surprise at the person that's standing there. First looks at him, amused, white hair moving in an invisible breeze. He's not much taller than Izuku, and not too much older by the looks of him. He wears simple white linen, hands folded placidly, and he's barefoot. Naturally, Izuku gapes. This is First. The First. The original user of One for All. The one who was born with the quirk, and the one who made its legacy in the first place. First pays no mind to Izuku's current fish cosplay, looking back at where Izuku saw the blurs. "That would be 2nd and 3rd, he says, as if they were in conversation already. "They aren't the most sociable, I'm afraid." It's all right," Izuku stammers out, quickly turning away from where they were. "It's so cool to be here, to see you all for the first time. I can't imagine everything you've done for our society." He dips into a bow, and First laughs. "Thank you, 9th, but that's unnecessary. We just all did what we thought was best for our times." "Yeah, and look where that stuck us," a voice teases from behind him. Izuku whips up faster than he thought humanly possible, spinning on his heel and having to stabilize himself halfway through lest he fall. He stares at the man in front of him. The man stares back, deep red eyes dancing. His dark burgundy hair is long, even swept into a ponytail, and there's a faded mark curling on his forehead like a burst of flames. He's old enough that Izuku can see the outline of his cheekbones and the deep crow's feet by his eyes, and one of his arms is done up in a sort of sling. But he's wearing a green and black checkered hayori and his earrings have suns on them, and Izuku knows him. "When did you get tall?" he chokes out. Tanjiro throws his head back and laughs, a deep and comforting sound. Izuku realizes this is the first time he's heard his once broomy laugh aloud. Tanjiro grins at him, looking ecstatic. "And you're still short," he says back. "How long has it been since the quirk was dismantled for you?" Izuku swallows, understanding what he means. "It was like a few hours ago." Tanjiro shakes his head, still smiling. "Much longer for me." He stretches out his arm, and Izuku falls into the embrace without a thought. Tanjiro still smells faintly of wood smoke, and his hayori is old and soft beneath Izuku's touch. He presses his face into Tanjiro's shoulder, and Tanjiro's hand comes up to thread through his hair. "I have so much to tell you," Tanjiro murmurs above him. Izuku lets out a muffled reply, and Tanjiro somehow understands because he always does. Not yet. Let Izuku crush him for a little longer. So Tanjiro does, and all Izuku can think is, "I missed you."